Hey guys, thank you so much for watching. Welcome to the Scholar Online YouTube channel. In this channel, we make videos on learning web development, learning web application development, e-commerce development, digital marketing. If you're new to this channel, please feel free to subscribe. You'll find the subscribe button at the bottom of the video that you're watching right now, that red button over there. Please subscribe so that you will always be informed and you'll get notifications every time we set up a new video in this channel. We have new videos on Wednesdays and on Saturdays. Also, like this video and leave me a comment below, and I will try to get to each and every single comment that is made on this video. Another useful feature that we have on our videos is at the bottom inside the description box. If you expand the description of the video, you will see we've got timestamps to interesting sections in the videos that we're making, because we make a lot of long videos, so you don't have to watch the entire video. You can just read through the timestamp and read about the section that you're interested in, and you can just click on that timestamp and it will take you exactly to that section, and you can just watch that section. And it's also useful in future. If you return, you can just go to the timestamp and click on the section that you want to watch again. And also in the description below, guys, we've got links to our social media channels: Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. Please follow us there as well. We sometimes output information in there, and let's start learning. Welcome back to lecture 7. We are building a whole web application from scratch using Python and Django. Okay, so the website that we're building is a careers portal website, okay, where people will be able to come and search for job opportunities, job advertisements similar to something like Careers 24, and people will be able to register their profiles and their CV, and directly apply for jobs from our portal. And companies can also come and advertise the jobs, but later on we're going to have to figure out another way to actually sort of enrich our database with jobs, but we haven't gotten there yet. Currently we're still just trying to build the functionality that allows user registration and the display of jobs, assuming we do have data for jobs. Okay. So last week when we left off, we started the whole registration process, and we built this. If you click on it there, we built the entire registration page where first-time users can come in and enter their name, the surname, all the information that we need to create a profile for them. Okay, and once they've done that, they can also sign in and log in with the same details that I've registered with. And I think where we left off last week is that we had this page that we created that is called the terms and conditions page. All right, that you could go to that page and you could see the terms and conditions. So off camera, what I've done is that over the week, I think I gave you guys that homework as well, is to complete the terms and conditions. Okay, so that's what I've in the time during the week I've done. I've put in all the sections, section 1, section 2, and I've added all the details all the way to the end, to the contact information that you'd be required to do the terms and conditions. I'm actually building this real website. When I'm done with this entire course, I'm going to deploy it and it's going to really run. So I'm not just playing around and building a dummy, test project or for education purposes project. Yes, it's for education purposes, but it is a real project. That is why I'm actually doing properly the terms and conditions, because once I start taking in customer information and personal information, I need, by law, I'm required to have this. And I'm also required to have a privacy policy page, which I haven't built yet, but I'm going to build very similar to the terms and conditions page. But the sort of the content is slightly different. Okay. And if you want some guidance as to what kind of, what you should be having in your, what a typical terms and conditions or a typical privacy policy page looks like, just let me know. And I'll send you over a template that I use a lot on my e-commerce websites, but you can use it as well. You can sort of customize it for this type of website and be able to, specify your terms and conditions. Okay. And last week, I know you guys would have downloaded this, these templates that we're working with. I showed you right at the beginning of our lecture series, I showed you how to go to Theme Forest and download this entire, sort of like package of templates. Okay, and I know in this package of template there was no page for terms and conditions. Okay, and I got some questions. How did you build your terms and conditions page? Okay, so how I built my terms and conditions page is I worked off the FAQ. All right, so there was a template for FAQ. I think it's that one over there. Okay, so if you open that FAQ template, on the page, this is what it looks like. You see, it looks exactly like the terms and conditions page. So what I did is that I removed this career FAQ, and I was only left with general questions, and then I just renamed these terms and conditions, and then I had the different sections underneath, the way this tabs open. Okay, so this was section 1, section 2. If you look at the terms and conditions page, we have section 1, section 2, and section 3. So if you go off your FAQ template and you just replace FAQ with terms and conditions, and you delete this section, and then you expand this and include the entire section of the terms and conditions, you'll be able to replicate this template and do it. Okay, so this is just basic HTML and HTML editing to build your terms and conditions page. You can just work off the FAQ template. Okay, so I'm going to close that. And then there's something else that I wanted to discuss. Yes, on the home page. So let's just go back to the home page. What I did also off camera is that I just added a tab for terms and conditions at the top of the homepage, okay? And then I linked the terms and conditions. The same way you've linked it here under your register page, this link that goes to your terms and conditions. Remember last week we already done the URL path for this page. So if you go back, you use the same URL path and you just add on your menu at the top, you had home blogs, candidates, just add terms and conditions and then link it to the terms and conditions page, and then you'll be good to go. So this week, I want to continue where I left off with the profile page, okay? So currently, when people register and log in, it just takes them back to the home page. Yes, it shows them that they've registered and they've logged in, but what I would like to do is that when people log in, for you to take them to the profile page instead, okay? So I want to build an entire profile page. So let us go back to our template, all right? If you look at the template, there is a template that is called candidate profile, okay? So this candidate's profile page, that's the template that we're going to work from, okay? So if you open that template, it's this one over here, okay? Candidate's profile, this is what it looks like if you open it on Chrome, so you can see what it looks like. There is the top part, all right, and then there is like a lot of details at the back, about us, overview, education and all. So this is like a complete sort of resume, actually, so it's more than just a candidate profile. So what I'm going to do with this template, I'm going to work off this template, but I'm going to just, from the about us all the way to the bottom, I'm going to delete all of this because I'm going to rebuild the profile as a separate, I'm going to rebuild the resume as a separate sort of class in itself, okay? And then have the profile page just showing the registration information. So the information people have entered, which is their first name, their last name, their email addresses. Maybe currently they don't have this, but they'll be able to add it on, and then later on we'll be able to display that. So I only want to display this basic information and then allow them to navigate from this page into a page where they can, for example, start entering their resume or adding more information. So when somebody logs in the first time, they only see their login information that they've just entered, and then the ability for them to upload a picture and all of that. But the rest of the resume I'm going to delete, and then we will add that information later on as they sort of fill up their profile. Like how you do on a lot of job websites, they don't like make you fill in all the information at once at the beginning. They're sort of like, you put it in little pieces. First of all, you put in your name, your surname, so it doesn't seem like it's a lot of work. And once you've done that, then they ask for, your profile picture, please tell us what you look like. Then after a while, give us your job experience. So I'm going to sort of allow this profile to be built in that format, sort of in a staggered format and not one long form. So delete all of this. If you go to the HTML page for that, all right, let's look for it. Where is my HTML? There it is. All right. And you look for candidate's profile. Okay. If you go all the way to about us, all right, on candidate's profile, let's just search about us. Yes. And so this entire section from about us all the way to until the footer, all right? I just want you to delete all of that, okay? So just delete all of that all the way to the footer, like here, all right? So this whole section, all the way about us, okay, like that. I want you to delete all of that so that you're only left with the footer and you're only left with the top part, and all of that, okay? And then once you've done that, then I want you to notice that the profile page looks very similar to our terms and conditions page, All right, you see you have the top part there and then everything starts there. Similar to the top part in the image and then everything starts at the bottom. So what I want to do actually is what I showed you last week, where you have like, when you have a lot of similar basic HTML templates, instead of retyping everything, retyping your header, instead of retyping your menu in all the different HTML templates, what you'd rather do is to have a base template that then you inherit from, and then for the detailed templates and all the specific pages, you only focus on the content of the page or the body of the page. So the whole menu, top part, and the whole footer looks exactly the same for these other templates, except for the homepage, because you can see the homepage is different. Okay, so, okay, no, that's, let me go back. All right, so let me go there and say, except for the homepage, because the homepage is slightly different, it has all of that. The homepage is the only template that I've built from scratch. And I want it to be a standalone template because it looks slightly different. It's got more, it's a little bit more specialized. But the other templates, I'm going to have just one base template, and then we're going to inherit from that base template for all the other pages. I know the register page is different as well. The register page and the login page and the sign-in page also look similar, so they also inherit from another template. So we have last week we created a layout for the login and for the register page because these two pages look similar, okay? But the terms and conditions page looks similar to the profile page, and a lot of the other pages are going to look similar to the terms and conditions of the profile page, and those ones will also inherit from one base template, okay? Typically, with simple applications, you might just have one base template and lots of other templates inheriting from that one base, all right? But with a complex app like this one, you might have multiple layout templates. So we have a layout that looks like this, okay? And this layout, we will have pages inheriting from this layout, okay? And then you'll have the layout for the registration page, which looks like this, and then we'll have templates inheriting from this layout. And last week, we built this layout for the registration page. Now, this week, I want to build the layout for this template. You understand what I'm saying to you right now? So we might have multiple layout pages that look the same for different sort of HTML templates that are similar. You understand? So for this layout, what I did is I worked off the terms and conditions page, all right? So, and I've already done this off camera because I don't want to waste your time, okay? So what I did is off the terms and conditions page, all right, I created the layout page and I did exactly the same. Like this was the original terms and conditions page. Initially, I left the load static, and then I went down, and this is very specific. At the top here, where you would have the title and the meta block, I created an entire meta block for that, okay? And then I took it off the layout template. And then in the middle here, I had the body, all right? And then I left the footer the same. So if you go to the terms and conditions template, you will have the meta block and then you'll have the body block. And then it inherits from layout 2. So I created a whole new template called layout 2, okay? So let's go back and look at what our layout 2 looks like, okay? You have the HTML, and then you remove the block for the meta. So this is where the meta would come in, all your sort of your titles and your sort of your what you call your SEO stuff, like your keywords, your author, and all of that, come in there. And then after that, the body is the entire page. So the body of the page is everything that comes in here. All right. So this is what goes into the body. Okay. So I just refactored the HTML template similarly to how we refactored, and I showed you how to do it in the previous lecture when we did the login and the registration page. So I just want you to do the exact same thing. You copy and paste all of that, refactor your terms and conditions page, and still have it working and test it and make sure that it works. Then from there, you'll be able to work off the same layout too to create now your profile page. Okay. Now, our profile page now will be extending layout 2, okay? And it will also have block meta, all right? And when it comes to block body, you're going to go off the candidate profile, which was this page over here. So you're going to forget about all of that because now we're getting it off the layout page, all right? The only thing we want is this section over here. So that section and that section where it shows you your name and everything. So that's all you have to do. Just take all of that, copy it, and go into the profile template, and that is what goes into this section page, right? That's what goes in there, right? And paste it in there. So you have the block meta, and then you have the block body, and it's just that section over there that shows you the name and surname, and then you paste it in there, okay? Once you've done that, you will see, if you look into the detail of it, all right, it's a whole section. It has a BG overlay, a div over there at the top, and then it has a container and everything that's inside the profile page. Where's our profile page? There it is. Everything fits inside the container, okay? And then if you look at the container over there, you have a row, all right? And then you have two columns, okay? So this is one column MD6, and there's another column MD6. And a column MD6 is just a column that takes half of the page, right? So it's from here to here, that's a column MD6. And then there's another column MD6 here. So initially, the second part was a little bit empty. So I've decided to add, you know, like a whole section over there that I'm going to have buttons that are pointing somewhere, right? So on the second column MD6, I'm just going to like sort of like add a component wrapper, you know, and have a background, a white background to it. And then I want the heading to say like, you know, what do you want to do? And then from there, I'm going to have like 4 buttons. And these buttons is going to be like sort of giving, you know, your user like different options on what they can do going forward. So once they've logged in, they've registered, they see their profile page, they're going to see their profile information, their name, their surname. And then there'll be buttons that's telling them, do you want to complete your profile, update your resume, or you want to search for jobs, or you want to create a job alert, or you want to read a blog. So already I'm thinking ahead, these are all the different functionalities I want my application to have for users to have access to, and I want to make this easy for them of the profile page, okay? So on this column MD6 was not there initially, so you just need to add the column MD6 next to that first column MD6, and then add that wrapper, okay, component wrapper, rounded, shadow, BG light, and then after that, you know, there's a div at the top there. What do you want to do? That is P4 border bottom, and then after that, you know, you're gonna have another div, you know, margin top, margin bottom 10, and then you're gonna have the different buttons. You know, the first one is a button primary outline, the next one is a button success outline, button danger outline, button dark outline. And these are typical, you know, Bootstrap classes. But if you're not sure how this all works, the template that you downloaded actually has a very nice, you know, demonstration of all these functionalities and all the different sort of elements that you can work with, okay? So if you go back to the package that you downloaded, there is a page or an HTML page that is called, let me just look for it, components, okay? It's called components.html, okay? So if you go to your browser and you just, everything as it is like that, just copy it, all right? And this is opening the files obviously from my computer, so that you open these HTML pages, all right? And then just go to a new whatever and open the HTML page that is called components, okay? Okay, and components is this HTML page over here, all right, and it shows you all of the functionality of the template that you've downloaded, and a lot of templates will have a page for components that's similar to this, okay? So if you go over there, you'll see it will show you these are the buttons, this is the typography, so these are components HTML page. It will show you the outline buttons, the display, the different button sizing, the badges, you know, so these are all the different things you can do with these templates. And the sort of the styling is very similar to or close to your sort of Bootstrap styling, you know, like the way they name their buttons, you know, button primary, BTN primary, you know, so if you're used to Bootstrap, it's very similar type of, you know, it works like Bootstrap. The colors are the same, they just look a little bit nicer, you know, so it's sort of like it's a redesigned Bootstrap. So just make sure that you're always referring to this if you want to add a new section of on your page that, for example, wasn't there already. You can use that, because that's what I actually used, because I wanted to add to the left of this, or to the, I don't know, to the right of this, my right, I wanted to add a whole new sort of, you know, card over here with the different buttons that is navigating to different places. So I used this components HTML page to find a, this is like a card, okay? So I was able to go and get this card and then, you know, have buttons over there that that are going somewhere else. Okay, so this is what I ended up with. Okay, so if you go to my profile page, I ended up with that component wrapper and then all the different buttons. Okay, so I've redesigned this entire page, and I'll make this code available for you if I'm going a little bit too fast. Okay, so what you can do, you can just copy this entire page as it is. As you can see now, I'm extending layout 2, but there is no Python functionality on this template. It's just everything is hard coded. Okay, I just want to make sure that all of that works first of all. So if you go over here on your server, and you can just do Control-C to stop the server, all right, and you can clear the server. What you need to do is where am I gonna put this? Profile is going to be under users. Okay, so you just go to the CD to the users application. All right, and under the users application, the first thing that you need is under the views. Obviously, you need to create a view for your template. So you would go to nano views.py over there, and then underneath the register view, you're going to create a new view that is called we're going to call this view profile. Okay, so you just type in def profile request like that, and then you return render. Obviously, you have the first argument is the request itself, and then you're going to, the name of the template is going to be profile.html, and then you just return an empty dict for now because there's no data that we're sending into the front end. Okay, so this is the simplest way to just represent a a view function. All right, so once you've done that, you're just going to do Control X, and then you're going to close that file, and then we're going to go and into the templates. So you're going to CD templates. All right, and then after you CD templates, you're going to list. Okay, you can see that I have the profile HTML template over there already. Okay, so I'm going to just open it so you can see what is in there. Profile.html. All right, so basically I just copied and pasted it like I explained to you. We are extending layout 2. Okay, and we have block meta at the top, and that's profile, and block body has that the 2 column MD6s. The first one is just your name, and there's going to be like a place for a picture. This is the rounded pill picture. And then the second column is where we're going to have that card with the different buttons that's leading somewhere, and what do you want to do as a question. Okay, so I'm going to close this, and then the last thing that you need to do obviously is to create the URL path for the page that you just created. And for that, I'm going to get out of this. Okay, so CD out of here completely, and then I need to open nano Scoro app urls.py. Okay, you need to open that, and then you'll see over there I've entered a new URL path for profile, and I've called it profile as well. Okay, so it's path profile with a backslash at the end, and then I'm using users view.profile. This is the new profile function that I just created now that renders the profile.html page. All right, and then I'm going to call it profile. Okay, that's all you need to do. Okay, and then you save that. And then you can just run this again, and to run this I need to just copy what is this now? I need to just copy this and paste it in there. All right, and then I can go have a look at the profile page. Okay, so from the terms and conditions I need to just actually just type in the profile. Okay, I haven't set the I haven't coded this in the in the root. I mean in the to go there automatically from when you log in. So for now I actually have to do this manually just to see what the profile page looks like. Okay, so you'll see this is the the layout that we're using. Okay, that has the footer and at the top over there, and then you'll see that I only wanted this section. Okay, so if you look at the creators and not creators, if you look at the candidate's profile, I only wanted this section and I deleted everything else. That's why you only see this and there's nothing at the bottom, because I've deleted everything else and you see only the footer. And this is what I want my profile page to look like. I want it to just be simplistic. When somebody logs in, it's just going to show them their name, their surname, their email address, and then it's going to allow them to upgrade their profile. Currently they don't have a profile picture, so it's showing a blank profile picture, but once they download a profile picture it will show something. And maybe what we'll do is that we'll programmatically remove this and hide it so that it doesn't show this blank 400 times 400, and we'll do that later, and I'll show you how to do use conditional displays. We'll do it similarly to what we did at the top there when we're displaying career portal, if somebody's logged in, show career portal. We'll do something similar and say, if there's no profile picture and somebody hasn't created their profile yet, just don't show anything. And once the profile picture is there, then show it, okay? And then once that is done, you'll see the different buttons, complete your profile, search for jobs, create a job, read blogs. We're not going to wire all these buttons today, all right? But already you can think ahead all the different things, the functionalities we want to have right now, okay? So the first thing that we actually want to work with is this whole updating a profile. That's the most important thing. And then search for jobs, we did a little bit of this, but we'll get into that in a little bit more detail. And then maybe later on we'll do the job alert, and the blogs will definitely be right at the end of this entire lecture series, okay? So that's a mouthful, okay? And not a whole lot of coding, just sort of like taking you through. This is sort of like what if you want to call it, like just like dotting the T, the I's and covering the T's, just letting you know where we need to continue from. But this lecture is actually really starting from here, and we've sorted out our HTML, we've sorted out our layouts, we've sorted out our blank template without any sort of real wiring, in terms of Django. But I'll make this sort of, HTML, blank HTML, available to you so that at least the starting point, but not yet. I'll do it at the end of the whole lecture series when I'm done and I know that everything is 100%, okay? So what we're going to do now is start working on this profile page, okay? The profile page in detail, where people can complete or update their profile information, and we're going to start with that now. Okay, before we proceed, there's something a little bit wrong with our profile page, okay? And let's just fix that quickly. Currently, the way our profile page is, you can see I am on my profile, but I still have the register button that is showing up there. So this is telling me that I'm able to access the profile button, the profile page, even though I am not logged in, okay? So properly, when you build an application, you need to make sure that there are certain things that are only accessible by certain, members, or, you need to sort of pass certain, requirements to access certain pages. For example, your profile page, you do not want people to be able to access your profile page if they haven't logged in, and people should be able to only access the profile page that belongs to them, okay? So to fix that, it's a very easy fix. We need to go and, first of all, let us just stop the server, Control C. All right, and then let's go to the views and then sort that out first. Okay, so we need to sort that out from the views, and to open the views page, remember we need to go into the users application. So we can use Nano, the text editor, to open the views, and then we need to go into the users. Okay, the users, that's the application where the profile page is, and then under users it's views.py. All right, so we need to go in here, and we need to add a, if you've used Python Flask before, you're aware of that, the decorators that you have on top of the functions, okay? So when you're using function-based views, we need to use those decorators, and those decorators, luckily for Django, they're already sort of pre-built into the Django application, okay? So we just need to import the decorator at the top, and then we can access it at the bottom to make sure that that page is not accessible if you're not logged in, okay? And in order to do that, there's a login required decorator, and to import that, you just need to say from Django.contrib.auth, Django contrib auth decorators. All right, from django.contrib.auth.decorators, all right, import login required. All right, like that, okay? And then at the bottom down here, after you've imported it, all right, you can use it, and to use a decorator, obviously you have to start with the @ sign, and then you're going to say @ login. Actually, let's just copy it like the way we've typed it in there. @ login to required, okay? So what this is going to do is that it's going to sort of make sure that before anybody can access the profile page, that they're already logged in, okay? And then we also have to make sure that the profile page is the default page that you go to after you have successfully logged in. So instead of this taking us to our, a home page when we logged in the last time, it should take us to our profile page, and we should be able to see the profile page once we logged in, okay? So to fix that, All right, so I'm going to close this and save this. All right, and I'm just going to run server quickly to just make sure that everything is okay. I haven't broken anything, no errors. All right, that's fine. Control C, and then we need to go into our settings file. If you remember the settings file, that's where we sort of specified the login redirect URL and then where it needs to be taking us after we've logged in. All right, so let us open that, and that's going to be under Scholar app. All right, if you've got the spelling right, that should be the correct one. All right, and we've specified the login URL, and the login redirect URL should be profile. All right, should be the profile page. Okay, so where else do we need to specify that? I think that's pretty much it. Okay, so let's test this and make sure that this works. All right, okay, before we test that, there's something else that I wanted to fix quickly here. So you won't access this page if you're not logged in. So you won't see the register button. You will see what you should be seeing when you're logged in, which is actually your profile, but you shouldn't actually also see that profile button. But we'll fix that when we get to it. Okay, and then the other thing that I want to fix now that you're logged in, we can be able to access the user function or the user variable that is accessible through the auth through Django auth. Once you've logged in and it says authorize you and you're an authorized user, you have access to that user variable. Okay, so instead of hard coding my first and my last name, I'm actually going to say in here user, that user variable is accessible. I don't have to actually send it to the front end using my template. I can just access it directly from anywhere in the template. So I can say user dot first name. All right, and then I can say, leave it a little bit of a space and have user dot last name. Okay, like that. All right, and then over there as well, I can also access user dot email. I think that's what I called it. That's what we called it. We called it email, right? Let me just make sure that we did call it email. How would I make sure of that? Let me just open my user. So I'm going to go to CD users. And I'm going to open nano models, actually forms, forms.py, and then you can see all the different functions that you've recreated here. We have the email, we have the first name, the last name, we have the username, and so these are all the functions we can actually access from that user. So I'm going to say user.email. All right. In fact, I'm going to use user.username as well. Username, and then I'm going to give it some space and that, and user.username email, like that. Okay, so you should be able to access all of these. And currently we don't have a profile picture because we don't have that created yet. And so I'm going to copy this again, and in fact the profile at the top there, I'm going to say profile and say user.username. All right, so that it will show profile and show your username at the top of the title of the page. All right, so this is a little bit more personalized, and we are accessing that user variable inside our profile page. And then you shouldn't be able to access the profile page if you are not logged into the application. Okay, so let's see where we are. So I need to go into Scholar app. Okay, and then I need to go to nano users. Not nano, sorry. No, I need to go to CD users. CD is moving into that directory. So CD users, nano opens up, and then when you're in CD users, you need to, I need to go into my templates. Okay, so I need to go CD templates as well. And once I've gotten into the templates, I just want to get rid of that profile HTML template by saying rm profile.html, so that it deletes that template, and then I can say nano profile.html so that it will recreate it, and then I can paste all the changes that I've made. And then I'm going to then close this, say yes, and then let's cd out of there again. All right, and then let's run server. Okay, All right, and after we've run server, let us go to our application and try and refresh the profile page, okay? So when you refresh the profile page, this time it's going to take us to the login because we need to log in before we can access the profile page. So our, login required decorator is working the way we want it to work, okay? So let me see if I still remember my password from last week. I had to select a difficult password because Django wouldn't allow me to use a simple password, and so I don't like difficult password. Let's see if that's the correct word. Perfect. And when you logged in, it takes you directly to your login, to your profile page, and you can see over there that button is now the profile button, which obviously we want to get rid of it because if you're on the profile page you don't want to see it, but we'll fix that later. And then you can see now you're showing your first name and your last name, your email address, your username, and obviously this is not linked to anything yet. And then when you click on this, it should be able to take you to your detail resume. Okay, so let's talk about the resume. Okay, so this is just basic finishing up the profile page. Let's talk about the resume. Okay, what is it we want to display in the resume? What would the resume class look like? Okay, if you've been following along with our lecture series, we've talked a little bit about classes when we're creating the job class, and that was early on, and we were very simplistic because I just wanted to introduce you to the whole concept of classes and models in Django, because remember we discussed Django is object oriented, so everything is going to be around the objects and the classes. And I was very simplistic back then because I just wanted you to learn very quickly what a class would look like if you had to do the very basics. But now we're going to go into creating a proper class for a professional, web application that actually works with all the functionalities that you need it. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the profile. The resume class. Okay. This is what the resume page currently looks like. And if you look at the template, it will guide us. And this is the good time for you to also sit down with your client and discuss with your client what you want to display in your resume page. What do you want people to put in? What kind of information do you need to put in? I am my own client, and I'm actually just using this template to guide me. So what I want to see on the profile page, on the resume page, obviously, we're not going to be showing this because this is now shown on the profile page, but we're going to be showing the details about the details about the resume. The person's personal information, their education and their experience. And you can see the experience here is like going to be a list of sort of experience objects. So this already should be getting you to thinking around, how am I going to structure this data set? Because how am I going to put together a class that has multiple variables of the same thing, like it has multiple experiences which look the same as an object in itself, but maybe one person might have 5 experiences, somebody else might have 10, somebody else might have 1. How are we going to put this in the data structure that it makes sense? Okay, so this is the time to think about this. And education as well, somebody might have only 1 qualification, somebody might have multiple. But when it comes to things like an overview or your summary of your own experience and a summary of everything that you have to offer, your address, where you come from, your personal information, one person is going to have 1 address, one person is going to have 1 summary of their entire career, so that is not something that's going to be replicated in the data set. But something like education might be replicated because one person might have multiple education qualifications, but one person is only going to have 1 overview of their profile. So how are we going to structure this data set in a way that makes sense? Okay, so I've already done this to save you a lot of time, but I'm going to take you through what I've done in putting this data set together. So I've built a class, all right, for the resume, okay? And there's many ways you can do it. By no means the way I've done it is the best way to do it. I like to do things in a simplistic manner that I understand, even if I have to do a little bit more coding, but I like to write code that makes sense to me, that even if I read it later, 2 years later, I'll remember what I wrote, okay? So for that, we're going to go into, let's go into our Python file, and I've created a model for resume, and I'm going to take you through what I've done, and then we're going to copy this model into our Python, our VPS, because this is where we are running our code. All right, so if you do Control-C there and you clear, this is where we're running our code. And if you've been following with us, I type my code in my own code editor in my computer. So this is an Atom code editor in my computer. And then I copy the code and I paste it in the VPS because I'm actually running the code in like a digital ocean droplet virtual private server that runs on Linux, because I am running this application on Linux as I'm building it. Okay, unlike the structure that most people like to follow is to code everything in your own computer, then you have to import Python, all the different versions of Python. I don't like to run multiple versions of Python on my personal computer. You can see my MacBook doesn't have a lot of space. I do a lot of video recordings, and videos take a lot of my personal space on my computer. So when I write code, I actually prefer writing the code in a VPS, in a server, and the way I normally do it is actually, with Git and pushing the changes. But in this time, I don't know why I chose to do it like this, but I'm basically copying and pasting, snippets of code as I go along. I type it in my code editor, I paste it in the VPS, and then I run it off the VPS. And that's sort of, if you're just catching up with us, that's sort of the process we've been following. Okay, by no means the best way to do it, but this is just how we ended up doing it in this video tutorial. But as long as you can still follow and understand what it is we are doing here. Okay, now what you need is remember, you need a class. We're going to need a class. In this specific case, we're going to need a form as well, because we're not going to enter data in the backend like we did for the jobs. We're going to actually create the class. Once we've created the class, then we're going to use the class to create the form, and then we're going to create the data in the sort of the front end. Okay, so we're going to use the form to create, and we're going to talk about the crude create, read, update, delete functionality of Django. Okay, so let's look at the model itself. All right, so if you look at the bottom here, these are all the fields that go into the model. Okay, so I'm going to have a user. Okay, and a user is going to be a one-to-one field. The one-to-one field is almost like an extension. Okay, so when you have a one-to-one field with another class, you're almost like extending the user class and creating more into what that goes into the user class. So you'd be able to access the user from this field, but then you would have more variables that you are defining in the user. So that's how we're going to be working. So we're going to have one user, and one user can only then have one resume. Okay, they can update their resume, they can add more information, they can delete that resume, but you won't be able to have two resumes as one user on our application. All right, that's how the one-to-one field works. Okay, and on delete as well, we've defined it as cascade. This means that if the user is deleted, if the user deletes our profile, our database, our web application, for whatever reason, their resume is going to be deleted. So if they delete their profile and they redelete their username, their resume is also going to be deleted because it's connected to their user. All right, and then I created this one unique field. Okay, the character field, and I like it this way because I use the unique field for a lot of other things, and you'll see later on in the application the usefulness of this unique field. Okay, and for that I'm going to talk about it a little bit later, but I'm going to use like a unique identifier. Okay, I'm going to use uuid4 uuid4 for this unique ID, and I will let you know how I'm going to do it and how we'll discuss that a little bit later on. Okay, and then the image, this is going to be like the profile image, of course, and this is an image field. All right, and then you have to define what the default image. This is an optional what you call it. You don't have to put it in. It's up to you whether you want to have a default. You can just leave it out, but you must specify upload to field. Okay, if you recall, let me just close this. All right, we've already done this before because we've already uploaded images in the past when we did our job, our job class. All right, so that's why I wanted to start with that, so that at least all of that is sorted out. But if you're new and you didn't watch that video, the way the upload to works, it will upload to a folder that you have defined that it must upload to. All right, even though you define it here, you actually have to define it inside your settings.py file. All right, so if you go to Nano and you look at Scholar app, this is our project directory, and then you go into settings.py. all right, if you go at the bottom here, you will see that you had to define your media root. Okay, your media root is like in the root of the project directory, where must the application save all the images, all the documents, all the media that gets uploaded into your application. You have to define the media root. The media root tells Django where that information is saved. Okay, if you don't define it here, your application is not going to work very well. Okay, so you have to define it here, and then you also have to define it inside of your urls.py file. So if you just let me just copy that, and instead of settings.py, I'm going to just go into the urls.py. All right. And in the urls.py file as well, you have to add this URL pattern, media URL, media root, inside of your your urls.py. So both these two steps are necessary for you to be able to upload files and upload documents and be able to access those documents once you've uploaded them. If you don't do these two things, you won't be able to upload documents properly. And if you now list, because we are in the root of our directory, that's where our manage.py file is, you will see there will be a new folder created called upload. The first time you upload your first document, Django will create this folder for you. And if you look inside, if you like go into CD uploads, all right, you will see ls. Let's list what's in here. This is all the different upload folders that you have created, where every time you say upload to, like now I'm saying upload to profile images, you will see here there's nothing called profile images in here. So the first time I upload my first profile image, Django is going to create that profile images folder for me, and it's going to add that profile images in there. And if the profile images folder already existed, it would just upload the information inside that profile images folder. Okay, so that's how the uploading of documents and uploading of images work inside of Django. There's only two things you really need to define. You need to define the media URL inside your settings folder, and then you need to define it inside of your URLs. You need to add it as a inside of a URLs file, inside of your project directory. Once you've done those two things, then all you need to do inside of your model is just to specify the folder that you must upload to. Okay, and I like to sort of separate my different folders so that later on when I'm going through my application, I know that this is the images that get uploaded, this is the property stuff that gets uploaded, and then profile images that get uploaded, this is where they go, and so forth and so forth. Okay, so default.p, because you call this default.jpg, all right, it's actually not, you should have a default file in here if you want to be able to display it. And this default file, you can see, is not inside of any folder. If you had, for example, profile images, let me do that. If you had that as your default location, then you would have to save your default file inside of your profile images file. Okay, but because you only have it like this, like default.jpg, it means you actually have to save the default profile picture just in the root of the uploads folder. Okay, we haven't saved anything yet for now. We're gonna get through that later, and I'll show you how to do it. But I just wanted to explain how the whole image field works. Okay, and the file field works exactly the same. You need to define the upload to a location. All right, so once you've done that, email confirmed is a Boolean field. And if you want to know all these different fields that go into the Django documentation, we discussed it a little bit when we were doing the job, a model. But you can go to the Django documentation. And maybe I can put this link in the description. Okay, so this is like your Django documentation, fields, model field references, and then you can see all the different types of fields that you have. All right, and you can go through this in your own time, and they have very good example. I think Django documentation is probably one of the well-written documentations that you find inside of the Python type frameworks. I've worked with a lot of Python frameworks, and Django documentation is really well written. It's easy to follow even for beginners. Even if you're learning Django, they've got good examples that show you how to do stuff. I've actually learned a lot from following the examples inside the documentation. It's documentation you can actually read, and you don't have to, they've got better answers than in some cases, Stack Overflow, which is rare, right? So go through here and you can see all the different autofield, and they show you all the different options that you need to explain to sort of define when you use a certain field. Okay, big autofield, integer field, binary field, Boolean field, and all the options that you've got, the default and so forth. Okay, and it tells you here that the null is true, and all sorts of other things. So I'm going to use a Boolean field. Okay, and let me just make sure I don't have the spelling wrong and I've got the spelling right. But basically that is the Boolean field. Okay, and default is false, which means that if nobody enters anything, it will default to a false email confirmed. And this email confirmed is something like, it's like when you create your resume for the first time, I'm going to expect you to confirm your email address that you provided under your profile. You'll see a lot of web applications when you create a profile, you are required to confirm your email address, and I don't like to do it right at the start, and you don't let anybody do anything without having confirmed it, because then sometimes that even discourages users from using your web application. What I actually like to do is allow very little functionality. Like in this specific case, they'll be able to at least see their profile page, which is just their login username and password and the email address they've given me. But then once they start creating their resume, there's going to be this requirement for them to confirm an email address, and I'm going to keep track of it here. And initially, I'm going to say it's false. So that when you first get started, I'm going to say you haven't confirmed your email address. And once I've sent them the email link, and we'll get through that later. Once we send them the email link and they confirm it, and then we're going to be able to up this to true. But for now, this is why we have this field here to track that people are going to be confirming the email addresses, okay? And the date of birth is just a date field. We want to keep track of how old people are. That's important a lot for CVs, because a lot of the companies that are looking for employees like to know how old people are, like to know this kind of information. So that's why we have it there. They like to know, are you female, male, and perhaps we should have added your ethnicity as well, because that is actually usually one of the things people want to know in South Africa. Are you black, female, if they're looking for like a black person for the job, and I didn't have that before because I wasn't even thinking that far, but actually in a lot of job sites that might be required. Okay, so I'm just going to add that quickly, and I'm going to call it ethnicity. All right, and ethnicity is going to be a character field, so I'm going to copy that, models.character field. The only difference is that it's not a normal character field, because a character field is just a field where you can add a string. I want it to be like a drop-down character field. So I want it to have to give it options that people can choose from, because when it comes to ethnicity, I want you to tell me, are you black, white, Indian, blah, 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 blah. Okay. So I'm going to go at the top, and I'm going to write the choices that I would like people to use. All right. So you need to start by defining them first of all. And I actually got this from the Django documentation. You can read it, and they explain in detail how to do this. But I'm going to say, let's just give it a couple of options. Okay. Let's say you have black. All right. And white or Caucasian. Should we say Caucasian or white? Let's just say white. Not try to be politically correct. Okay. And then let's say, are you colored? All right. In other countries, you might say something else, and are you Indian? Okay. And then are you Chinese? Because we have a lot of Chinese these days, even in the ANC. So let us be very, very, very clear, because I think with BEE, people want to know also, because nowadays there's different levels. It's no longer just, if you're non-white, you fall into BEE. There's actually different points for your actual ethnicity, so you need to be very specific. But I'm not going to cover everything here. And I don't know if I'm spelling Chinese right. Okay, am I spelling Chinese right? Let me just check it quickly on Google. Okay, Chinese. All right, Chinese. Okay, Chinese is one N and one S. Okay, like that, one N and one S. Chinese. All right, Chinese. And let's see, what else do we have? Black, white, Indian, colored, Chinese. Yeah, that's the main ethnicities we have in South Africa. I can add more. You can always add more later. That's not important. So once you've done that, then you need to define your choices. All right. So I'm just gonna copy this like that over there, and I'm gonna just create and I'm gonna call it ethnic choices. Okay, and that's going to be an array. All right. So that's an array of choices. All right, and then I'm going to just paste all of that in there. And then once I've pasted it in there, it just needs to be inside of, inside of brackets like that. So let's just do that quickly. And then obviously because it's a list, you need a comma at the end. All right. And it's a tuple as well. So you need to remove that two sign and add a comma, right? So that's not very difficult to do. All right. So your choices is an array, and inside an array is an array of tuples. Initially showing that black will equate to that black over there, all right? So, and the same. So this is actually a variable that you've defined at the top there, all right? And that's a variable that you've defined at the top there. Indian is a variable that you defined at the top. And then these, what you call it, ethnic choices are the choices that are going to go into your character field, all right? So inside your character field under ethnicity, you're going to just say choices. Okay, you define the choices as your ethnic choices, and then you can define a default if you want. Especially with choices is important, and assume that everybody's default is going to be black, and they're going to really have to change this, okay? But they will be able, we'll make this a required field in the form that they actually have to fill in. So it won't end up being a default black, but for the sake of our database, I think I just need to define a default so that it doesn't sort of give me errors. Then, so that's basically how you do all the choices, and you'll see I've done choices for, let me look at all my lists. The sex choices, male, female, other, marital status, are you single, married, widowed, the different provinces within the country, because these are the kind of parts on your form or inside your database where you don't want people to just enter any information. So if you defined a field like sex and you want people to tell you what is their gender, okay, you don't want to just leave it as a character field and then someone will write I'm a male, another person will say I'm a woman, and another one will say, I'm a girl, and then the other one will say I'm whatever I feel like, especially in a database that you want to be able to structure things, and later on when you call data, you want to be able to call, I want all the males in Johannesburg, or I want all the females in Cape Town, and you want to sort of pull data out. You want to be able to structure the way the data goes into the database. You are thinking ahead for in future when you pull that data out. You don't want people to enter anything they want. So every time you have options that are very well defined, like male, female, other, you want to actually just give people a multiple choice. Are you a male? Are you a female? Are you other, or are you, whatever it is you are, but you must give them the choices so that someone doesn't say, because someone can say I'm a male, another one can say I'm a man, another one can say I'm a boy. And if you just leave it as a character field, anybody will enter anything. That is why I'm doing it like this. Same as provinces, same as marital status and all those kind of things. So you want to define them, because a lot of the times this gets used again later when you are querying your database. When people are using the search functionality, they're going to be sort of like searching around these things. And when you're querying the database, we're going to be querying it based on these kind of variables that must be very, very specific. So I'm going to be able to just say, I want males. I want where this variable is equals to male. Whereas if the variable was either male or boy or whatever, I would have to guess what did somebody put in there. You know what I'm saying? And I might miss other actual males who decided to call themselves, a man instead. So I'm going to have the ethnicity as a choice, all right? So it will be a drop down, okay? The sex is similar, and I think I've covered sex and marital status. This is just very simple, similar to what I've already explained. We're going to give people a drop-down option to select those, okay? Then address line 1, address line 2, this is just going to be a character field, and I have null is equals to true here, but don't worry about that, because when it comes to the form and the form validation, when I create the form, I'm going to be able to say certain parts of the form, I want them to have, this many variables, and I want them to, but I don't want to limit my database, because sometimes then it affects even how I save information in the database. I don't want to have too many limits. I'm going to manage sort of the character number, I'm going to manage the, the requirement, the fact that it's required and it shouldn't be null inside of the form, but it's up to you how you want to do it, okay? You can also, like, for example, specify in here, the default length and all those kind of things inside your character field. How long must it be, how short, and whether something is required, and you can have it defined in your database, in your model, and then you can have it defined as well in your form. But I don't know, sometimes I think it just causes a little bit too much pain. If your application is not too strict, actually I just like to leave it open, and I'll sort it out in the form, because the form is the only way someone is entering data into the database anyway, unless if they have access to the admin panel, which I will, and then I will be able to manage how I enter data that way. So I'm not going to limit myself too much when it comes to this character field. I'm going to leave them slightly open-ended to give me more flexibility in my coding. And then the province is a choice. The phone number is just going to be character field. I don't want this to be a number field because this one specifically, actually, I don't mind how people put in their phone number. We're not going to be searching using the phone number. We're not going to be sending automatic SMSs, because sometimes if your system is going to be able to send people SMSs, then you want to be very specific how people enter their phone number. You want to be very clear that, okay, this is the code +27 and then, or +2 whatever, please enter your code here, or select a country from a drop down. Then if they've selected South Africa, the code is +27, then they must only enter the digits. Then you're going to specify the digits must only be 10 and blah, 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 because you don't want people to enter wrong phone numbers and sort of crashing your code if you're going to be using that phone number later on to either confirm the number or to send an SMS automatically from your whatever. So because I'm not doing any of that, I really don't care how people enter their phone number. They can enter like +27, they can enter 08, whatever. This is just going to be for the sake of us having that detail in our database, and maybe it will just be dealt with on a manual level, But this is another field as well that you need to consider how this phone number is used. And this is also a good time to talk to your client. Are you going to be sending people SMSs from the application? And if that's the case, then you have to be very specific how people enter the phone number into the database. All right. Then the Slug, this is another interesting field that we haven't seen before. All right. This is a new one. When we did the jobs, we didn't use this, and we're probably going to update our job model to do this, but I wanted to be very simplistic when I did the job class the first time, because I didn't want to confuse people too much in lecture 2 or lecture 3. But the Slug is a very, very important class, variable inside of a model, especially when it comes to Django and how you define how like the URLs and how people are going to be able to access the detailed form. If you look at let's go back to our profile page. So we're going to use all of this profile information to create a detailed profile for the person. Like, let's say the person is Scholar Online, and we're going to use this model first of all to create a form, and then that form is going to have an instance of, a resume, right? And then within this resume, every time we want to access that resume, we're going to have to know what that instance of that resume is based on, whether it's the current user or whatever the user you have searched for. And in Django, you will want, for example, to navigate to that person's profile. Like it will be, for example, whatever your website URL, /users/ the unique identifier of that user, the URL of that user. And a lot of people will just, they'll just use like sort of the ID of because we know that Django creates sort of like, an ID variable for you automatically in the background, and ID 1. So the first one that's added into the database is 1, second one is 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and we know that number will always be unique. And you can then say user/1, user/2 to be able to access the different instances of the user class or the user, model. But to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is not very useful when you have an actual real application. It's useful for learning, but have you seen a web app where you navigate to someone's profile, even LinkedIn, okay, and you navigate to your profile on LinkedIn and it says, let's go to LinkedIn now, right? And I want to show you what I'm talking about. I'm going to go to LinkedIn, and I'm going to go to, this is a Scholar Online. Okay, this is my profile on LinkedIn, all right? And if I want to go to my profile on LinkedIn and I want to go to my actual, unique profile, you will see it will be LinkedIn and then it will show my name, the way I've defined my name, Betha Hokong MBA, like a slug, and then it will have some unique number at the end. This is only because there might be more than one Betha Hokongs, for example, all right? So this is not /1 or /2 or /3 or /4. That doesn't look very professional for a real application, and it's not easy to navigate, and it's not good for SEO as well. SEO, search engine optimization. If somebody goes to Google and searches for Bertha Hokong, sometimes my LinkedIn profile appears because Google can already correlate the Bertha Hokong in the URL to my LinkedIn profile, and there's Bertha Hokong all over there to the person that's searching, and show that person that URL. So we're gonna do something exactly the same. All right, we're gonna make sure that when we have the detailed page, we want to create like a slug, and that slug we're gonna use it for navigation, so that when we go to the detailed page navigation, we can use the slug to navigate to that person's detailed page. All right. And that's why I have what we call the SlugField. Okay, it's really useful for that, and we'll talk a little bit about it later when we create the actual slug, how we want the slug to look like, because the main purpose of the slug really is to have a unique identifier or a unique long string that is URL compatible, that we can use to navigate to someone's detailed page without just it being 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, to have something meaningful in the URL that talks to what that detailed page is all about, but to also assist with the search engine optimization to find that page in future. Okay, and if you were building a real life application, you would have to do it like this. You're not going to be able to get away with ID1 is equals ID2 whatever when you're navigating to the detailed pages, right? It's a little bit more work, but remember I explained to you, we are doing this like a real life application. We're not just building a blogging simplistic Django app. Then I have date created over there, and this is just something useful that I added to all of my all of my models, and just get used to doing it, because it's always going to be useful. It's always going to be useful to know when was this instance created the first time, the instance of this model. So every time somebody uses this model class and creates a new resume, it's important to know when was the resume created. Okay, so you know everything about the resume, the person, the sex, ethnicity, the user that is connected to, their marital status, their address, where they live, but then you don't know, was this created last week or 3 years ago? How useful is this? And job companies that are looking for candidates will want to know, is this an active member, or is this a resume they added here like 10 years ago and it's no longer relevant? But then I also have last updated. Okay, so I have 2 fields in here. I want to know when it was created, but I also want to know when it was last updated. Last updated is useful for keeping track of every time somebody makes changes, and this also helps companies when they are searching through people's profiles to sort of also have an idea of, yes, this is a recent whatever, or this was created 10 years ago, but the user is updating it regularly because it was updated last week, or it was updated last month. So it helps companies figure out how active you are or how relevant your resume is if it has been recently updated. So I have both the fields of last updated and a date created, and I'll show you how I'm going to be populating these fields later on. And cover letter. Okay, so then I'm going to give the person an option to attach a cover letter and attach a CV to their resume. Okay, and the only thing I need to specify here is the upload to, and this upload to works exactly the same as the upload to inside of the image field. It works exactly the same as the file field. When you upload the information, you need to specify the folder which you're going to upload it to, and if that folder exists, nothing is going to happen. It will just save all of that information inside of that folder, inside of the location that you've specified in your media URL. Okay, and in this case, this is a new one. We won't have a new folder called resume. It will create it and put all of our CVs and our cover letters in there. All right. Then obviously this is the string function. This is when somebody then calls to print or to get the string of this resume or an instance of this resume. You need to define what must the class show to the person. Okay, so I've been a bit creative about this, and I'm typing this in Python 2. Even though I'm using Python 3, I'm typing this in Python 2, what do you call it, language or whatever, so that if you're following this along and you're working with Python 2, this code will work, but it also works in 3, so it doesn't matter. Okay, using how you format the strings. Okay, so what I'm saying, what is going to be printed here is just going to be, inside this curly braces, it's just going to insert the variables that need to go in there. Okay, so the first thing is going to insert their first name, their last name, and their unique ID. Remember, self.user is now this user one-to-one field. Okay, so self-dev user is this, and once you have access to that user one-to-one field, you actually get what you access the user class as a class. Okay, so every variable inside of the user class you have access to. So you have the user.username, the user.last name, first name, whatever it is, the email address of the user. You have access to all of those inside of your resume model. Okay, so that's how the one-to-one field works. So I can actually now print the user's first name and the user's last name, and then I have in here the self.unique ID, because we're gonna have cases, and you'll see once this application grows, there will be a lot of Berthas, there will be a lot of Paul Smiths. Okay, so every time you print someone's resume, you don't want to just print Paul Smith, and then you have two Paul Smiths inside of your database, and it prints Paul Smith twice, and it looks like it's the same Paul Smith, but actually it's a different. This is again one of the reasons why I introduced the concept of a unique ID. I could have used unique ID, or could have even used ID, but I don't like ID, just very simplistic, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And also people can sort of read from the ID, or you're number 1 on the list, or you're number 10 on the list. I don't like using the ID either in the URL or anywhere in my data, structures, because it's just I leave it for the purposes of the database. Okay, then I create my own unique ID, and this unique ID is a character field. All right, and this unique ID is going to come from uuid4, and I will explain to you how it actually gets saved. But for now, just remember that it's a character field, and it's going to be a unique ID of about 6 digits. All right, because I'm only using the 4th element of the unique ID. I mean not the 4th element, but I'll show you how I get this done. For now, don't worry about it. Just take my the fact that the print is the unique ID, which is going to be generated over there. Okay, we'll get to it later when we're talking about overriding the save function. Okay, so the absolute URL. Okay, the absolute URL, this is a function inside of Django. Okay, you have to call it get absolute URL, and then the reverse of this is now going to be this is the name of a URL path. Okay, we haven't created this yet, so we might have an error if we try to run this. We're going to create this as soon as we're done with this. All right, we need to create a URL path that is called resume detail. This is going to be the path where you navigate to every time you want to see the detailed page. So it's going to be the same as when I open for you guys my detailed LinkedIn page. The name of that URL path we are going to call resume details. We haven't created that path yet. We are going to do it, but because we inside of the class, we have to specify that the name of that path, and then that the arguments that go into there is the slug. Okay, this is again the self.slug that we talked about here when you created the slug. All right, the SlugField, and we'll talk about this later on when we're doing the save overriding of the save function. So actually, let's just start with that now. So now self.slug currently, if you look at the top here, the slug, we're giving it a maximum length, and should it be 300? Let's make it 5. Yeah. In case someone has a long first name and long last name. Unique, we want this to be very, very true, and we'll know it will be true because we're going to add a unique ID to the slug. All right, blank, it can be blank, it can be null. So the first time it's created, it's going to be null because there's no default in here. All right, but we're going to now populate it in the save function because we're going to override the save function. What does overriding the save function mean? This means that inside of your class, okay, of resume, there is some super functions, functions that are default, okay, like the save, the absolute URL. These are functions that exist inside of the class anyway, okay? But you want to sort of define your own function. So you want something to happen before the instance is saved, okay? So for example, we want to define the slug the way we want to define the slug before the instance of the of the resume is saved, okay? So we have to then override the save function. We have to rewrite the save function the way we want to rewrite it so that we can sneak in some functions in there to do other additional things for our data class before this function actually gets saved. So what do I mean by that? the self.slug. You'll see at the top here when we defined it, because you can't actually define variables in here because this is just, defining the type of data that goes into the database. You have to define it inside of your, you have to either, override the save or somewhere else. Okay, but you'll see at the top here for slug, I just said null is equals to true. So the first time it creates the slug, it will be null. There'll be nothing here because I haven't defined a default slug. All right, it's hard to define a default slug from this point because we don't actually know what the default flag should be here because nothing else has been defined yet. So the best place to define the slug is to say is to slugify before you save that instance of the resume. Okay, and slugify is a function that we have to import. All right, so we imported from Django template default filters slugify. All right, then once we've imported it at the top there, we can use it. Okay, and this is also just a formatted string. All right, and I want to slugify the first name, the last name, and the unique ID. Okay, so let me just type up here. Okay, so if my first name was Kolo, okay, if this was the first name, all right, and my last name was online, okay, and for argument's sake, let's say the unique ID, okay, was equals to, I don't know, it will be some random number of like 6 variables or so. So if this was your first name, your last name in an instance of this resume of the user, and the unique ID was that, right? Actually, you need to define the unique ID first. Okay. So we need to do this first. But anyway, so if your first name was Kolo, your last name was that, and unique ID was something like that, then you would have, all right, the way this default is this sort of like formatted string works, you would have inside here you would have your first name. So your first name would be Skolo, okay. All right, there would be a space online, there would be a space, and then this would, the last one, the unique ID would go in there. All right, and then you would slugify this, okay, and to slugify that means that everything will go to lowercase, and everywhere there was a space there would be like a minus like that. Okay, so then your URL, your final slug would be skolo.online whatever this is. All right, so this is all that this function is doing. It's saying if the slug is 9, assign this to the slug, assign the first name, the last name, the unique ID like that, first name, last name, unique ID, and then slugify that to end up with this to the self.slug. All right, and then obviously we don't have the unique ID because currently the unique ID, all right, the unique ID is null because we haven't defined a default unique ID. All right, we can actually define it here, can't we? No, we can't. So it's better for us to define it inside of the save. Okay, so if self.unique ID is none, all right, self.unique ID must be user string uuid 4 split -4. Okay, now let me just show you what this is doing. Okay, so ls, we are inside the environment, so we need to pip install. We need to install this anyway inside of our environment, so make sure that your environment is activated, and then you need to install uuid, uuid like that. Pip install uuid. All right, and then I'm just going to open a Python shell like that by typing in Python. All right, and then whatever code I'm writing is going to be, it's like I'm writing code inside of Python. All right, now the first thing is to import the uuid. Right, so let's just import it like that. All right, so it's importing properly without an issue. All right, and then I want to just show you what comes out if you do this. All right, so let's just copy that. Actually, let's copy this first. String uuid 4. Okay, so let me call this xx is equals to that, right? And then let's show xx. Okay, so this is the UUID that you get, and every time you call this, you'll get a different UUID. Okay, and the UUID 4 is like, it will have like 1, 2, 3, okay, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different sort of data sets. I mean, not data sets, 1, 2, 3, whatever, strings with the dashes in between them, all right? So I don't want to use this entire, I don't want to use the entire, this is way too long. And I don't think I'm going to have that many users that I need to use the entire UUID for, all right? Actually, even this 3EFC would have been sufficient, or even that, okay? So what I'm doing is that I'm taking this UUID and I'm splitting it, all right? I'm splitting it on the minus, okay? So let me then copy that, right? Okay, and then let me call this YY, okay? YY is UUID split on the minus, all right? Then let's display what YY looks like, okay? So now YY is, it's taken all of this, obviously it's a different UUID because we called it again, but if you split it by where the minus is, you have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different elements. Okay, so it splits by the minus. You have the first one, the second one, the third, the fourth, the fifth one. But because it's a list, this is number 0 on the list, this is number 1 on the list, number 2, number 3, number 4. Okay, so what I'm doing is that I'm taking the number 4, the fourth one on the list. So after you split it by the minus, you take the fourth one on the list. Okay, and the fourth one on the list is the longest. All right, so I'm actually thinking, maybe let me not take the fourth one on the list. Let me take the first one on the list, and the first one on the list will be this one, okay? So let me take UUID/0 like that, all right? And then let me then copy the entire thing like that, all right? All right, and say, my user is equals to this whole function, user plus the string of already splitted whatever. 4. And let us now display what the user looks like. You see, now the user is that user, you put in that user string minus, you've taken that UUID 4. Actually now I don't even want to have the user at all. I just want to have it like that. Okay, so let's just do it like that. And let's just say the user is equals to that. All right, and let's show the user. Okay, so the user will just be that the first element of that list. Okay, that's whatever it is. And every time you call UUID 4, you get a different one. So every time I'm running this function, I'm getting a different one because it is giving me a different unique ID. So this is a good way to get a unique identifier inside of your database. And so if you had like somebody that had, like in your database, you had like a user that would have the same first name and the same last name, and you want to create a unique slug, you want to have another additional, unique identifier that the first and the second user cannot possibly have that in common as well. Because every time you create this UUID, you want to have a different unique identifier. And because our database is not going to be very big, I'm not even going to use the fourth one. I'm going to use the first one because I don't even think we will replicate that in our small database. So what's going to happen is when you click the save function, right? When you click the save function, because we are overriding the save function, Django is going to go into the save function and now run all these functions you have written before it can save, all right? So the first thing it's going to do is it's going to check if there's no unique ID identified, like if it's none, because initially when we created it at the top there, the unique ID, it's just null. It's going to be null because we haven't defined a default, right? So it's going to then go in here. Where are we? It's going to go in here and it's going to say the unique ID is now the string of whatever, all right? And this will only happen if it's null, which means the second time you save, if you save again, like maybe somebody was editing that instance and then they click the save function, this save function will still run. But the second time it runs, it will ask again, is it null? And the second time it runs, it won't be null because it was saved the first time. And so this UUID will only be added to that user instance once, right after it's created, when it's actually null. Because when it's created the first time, it will be none because it's not defined. So it will go in here and it will create it. But if it's saved again, for whatever reason, someone updated that instance or they added more information and it recreated it again, it's already saved and it's not going to be null, so it won't go into this. And that's why it's important to, when you're overriding the save function, to just to make sure that you do the check of null, of whether it's null or not. If, for example, you didn't have this and you only had that, and it just said self unique ID, and let's say you didn't have this, every time you saved, it would create a different unique ID, which you can do also if you want. Okay, but if, for example, somebody had shared their link 3 months ago, and that link had that UID on the Slug, and then every time you change or you update, that UID changes and that Slug also changes, it means that you're going to have a problem. So this is why you don't want to run this every time the save function is run. You only want to do the check of whether it is none, and then only when it's null do you save this. And then the next time if it runs it and it's not null, it's not going to save it. All right. And it's the same way we did for the Slug. It's also going to check that the Slug is none, and the Slug is only going to be none once. The first time it's created, it will be none. The first time this instance is created, the Slug will be none, and then only then will it create and populate that Slug field. And with now the unique ID, because now we have the unique ID, we've just saved it at the top there. All right. And once we've done that, actually, I'm thinking, let me combine these functions together and say self.slug is that. You see, so that this is done in one function, right? So that we don't have issues of it trying to add the self.unique ID there if it hasn't actually defined it, because some of these things can be, I know Python doesn't work like that, because it will actually go through these functions one after the other. But just to be on the safe side, we can actually write it like this. It will only check that the unique ID is null, because we will know that if the unique ID is null, definitely the Slug is also null. There's no way the unique ID is going to be null and the Slug is not null. And it doesn't matter if actually you change your Slug, if you change your Slug all the time. What if somebody changes their first name and they update their first name and update their last name? Maybe we won't give them a chance to do that. So they'll only have one chance to create their first name, because then that Slug will be, the Slug is only going to be defined once when the unique ID is defined, and we won't be able to change it later. If somebody actually changes their first and their last name, we're going to have a problem. So maybe we should have a different yeah. Okay, I'm gonna leave it like this for now, and we'll fix this later, because it's gonna be a problem later on if somebody changes their first name or their last name. I'm thinking where else to to do it outside of the unique IDs null, and just rerun this every time. So instead of putting it in here, okay, instead of putting it in there, all right, I mean, you can put it in there so that it's defined over there, but you can put it in here again, in case if it wasn't defined in there, if this was not null and it didn't go through this and it didn't go through that, it only goes through that, it defines it again, because every time it runs this now, it will check for the actual first name and the actual last name and the actual unique ID, okay? And then it will run this function again, and it will redefine the Slug. And therefore, if somebody has changed their first name later on, then it will run this again, okay? But it will run it anyway the first time, and if it's already run it anyway and it reruns it again, it's actually not a problem. It's not going to do anything. It's not going to harm your code. So maybe let's rather do it like that and make it more robust, that if the first name has changed, because otherwise this will only run ever if the unique ID was none. And later on, when people have changed stuff, the unique ID is not none, and then it doesn't run, and then it only remains the same Slug. So maybe let's put it like that. Then the second thing I wanted to do is to assign a default profile image, because you're gonna find situations where people do not upload a profile image and they just leave it blank. And those applications where I'm gonna give you like whatever default image I wanna give you, so that we have some image from the way the application looks, okay? So we're going to do the same thing, okay? And the way we're going to define the default image is that I want to have like multiple images to choose from, okay? And to have random choice. So the first thing I've done is that I've imported random at the top, all right? So after importing random at the top, I'm going to random choice of self.images. And if you look at self.images, I have like profile 1 up to profile 10. So these are all different images. And I'll show you how I did this. Okay, I just went to Envato, okay, like over there. And I looked for like images that look similar like this. You know, I searched Envato elements and I found all of these images. I downloaded these images, all right? And then after I downloaded them, I just sort of like cut and paste 1, 2, 3 up to 10 so that I have like 10 different profile images that look the same. And I'm going to give everybody like a default image. Okay, so I went on my default, on my graphic design software, and I just like sort of cut this out. I mean, this is actually very easy. And if you don't even want, if you don't even want to pay for this, you could just like on Mac, I think it's Command Shift 4, all right, and it allows you to take a like a snapshot, and you can just do this, all right, and you actually have an image like that, all right, and then there it is, it has taken a snapshot. And then if you go and look in your snapshot like that, we're gonna wait for it to come up, take some time. There you go. And then you can then you know, have this as an image, right? And what I've done is that I just have a profile a folder that I've created in my, you know, thingy, and then I have profile 1 up to profile 10.jpg. Okay, so these profile images are going to be default profile images. All right, so inside of the save function, all right, so inside of the save function over there, where was I? I've said if the self.image is default.jpg, which is what happens at the beginning. So the first time I've assigned the default as default.jpg. So the first time it saves this profile image, it's going to call it default.jpg. And then I'm going to go there and I'm saying, if it's default.jpg, I want you to assign self.image to random choices of self.images, okay? And self.images is this list of images. So I want you to randomly choose an image between profile 1 up to profile 10.jpg, all right? And then assign it to this to the self.image, all right? And then I need to make sure that these images are saved under our medium, you know what you call it, our medium, you know, our media location. So let me do that quickly so I don't forget, okay? So I'm going to go into my computer there. I'm going to CD completely out of this. I'm going to clear this. And I think I have this function for copying and saving stuff saved in here. So I'm going to just copy that. I'll show you what it does later. But if you've been following along, you've seen this before. I've used this once in the past. All right. So what does this do? Okay, it rsyncs. So rsync means it sort of like copies a file from one location to the other one. Not really copied, it syncs the file. So it doesn't delete it from the original location. It leaves it, but it sort of copies it to whatever the new location you wanted. Okay. So the original location is going to be my users, my TDSO desktop. So let me just change this. Okay. The original location is under desktop. You will see over there under desktop, I have the folder called profile, and then I want it to take everything that's inside the profile folder. All right. So under the desktop at the top there, I'm just going to say profile. Profile, and then slash, I'm going to just put a star, okay, a wildcard. What does that wildcard do? It says everything that is inside that profile folder, I want you to take it, right? And then I want you to move it to Zatosh 17862. This is my VPS, okay, 1786273. We can just make sure actually our app was running over there. It's 1786273.210, okay, because I have multiple VPSs. That's the one, okay? So inside of this VPS, I want you to go to, this is the whole folder structure, home, dev, scholar app, and I want you to go even up to, so let's exit out of this Python shell, right, like that, and let's clear, all right? And then I want to go to my media location. So the media location is dev scholar app uploads, all right? So it's the same thing over here. It goes to Zatosh, dev scholar app, so static. Okay, so I need to change this. It shouldn't go to static, it should go to Scholar app. From a Scholar app, it should go into uploads. All right. So it should go into uploads like that, uploads. All right. So if you look over there, it's Scholar app uploads. So if inside of the uploads, there is other folders. I don't want to put it into any folder. I'm going to put it directly in the root of the upload location. So inside of the uploads, it should just be uploads slash like that. All right. So if you run this code, what it will do is that it will take everything in there and it will copy it in there. Even if it doesn't matter if you had any computer that is connected to the internet and you know the IP address of that computer, okay, you can run this rsync and you can sync files between two different computers or two different IP addresses if you know their absolute path URL. The only thing is that you will need to access the computer. Like in my case, this is now my computer. I'm the user. I have the permission to copy this. But for me to save it over there, I'll have to like log in. Like so if it was like a normal VPS and I'm going into the user, I would have to put in the user password. But I'm actually accessing my VPS using SSH keys. So the only thing I'm gonna have to do is have the SSH keys and then I can run this function and it will run properly. So I'm just gonna click enter there and it's gonna run and it's just asking me for the passphrase because my SSH keys actually have a passphrase. So that's all I need to do. So I'm gonna enter my passphrase in there and you'll see these are all the images. All right, so it's profile 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10. Okay, and to make sure that these files are here, okay, remember I just did ls before. I'm going to do ls again. All right, and when I do ls again, there's the files. Before, when I did, it was only these two folders, and doing ls again, it's profile 1 10. All of these are now here. So I've just moved these profile pictures 1 to 10 jpg in here. So when I then do this function over there where I'm randomly choosing between this and whatever the self.image is going to be, from default to that, it will actually assign it any one of these images from 1 up to 10. And then when I display the profile picture, I'll be able to display it without an issue. Okay, so that's how what I'm doing over there. And then the last one is the last updated. Now this one you'll see I don't have it inside of an if. Okay, so I'm not checking anything. Every time you're running the save, I want to run this. So every time you run save, I want the time zone.now to be the last updated, which means every time you save this instance of the profile, I want you to change the self.updated. You will see you have different dates here. The date created will be created once. The default will be the first time you created, and it won't change every time. It will be always be the time it was created when it was first time zone.now. All right, but the save, because the last updated, which is the second one over there, there's no default. All right, so the first time it will be none. It doesn't matter. Because when you save it, it will just then use that time zone.now. And then every time you save, whether you're updating, because the save function is going to be called every time you update or whatever it is you do, every time this function will be called, every time the slug will be called, and it will recreate the slug and it will re-update the last updated. And then at the end, you have to remember to run super resume. This is the class itself. Okay, so I've called it class. You just basically have to make sure that it's the same class at the top there. All right, super resume, save, args and quads. Okay, so after you've done whatever it is, the fancy shenanigans you want to do before the save functionality by overriding it, you have to run the super, and then everything will be okay. Okay, we're gonna test this very soon, but let's hope we don't have a lot of errors because I haven't tested this yet. All right, and we are going to cd out of uploads. Let's list, and then we'll see where we are. We need to then cd into users because all of these classes are going to go into the users app. Remember, in Django, you sort of structure all your code inside of applications. All right, so this is all the classes that are talking to the users, and we're still probably going to have more classes, but for now, these are the ones we have because we're still going to create company and all of other models in there. All right, so ls, we can just open nano models.py. All right, you'll see currently there's nothing in here. All right, and I'm going to actually just delete everything because I think even from Django import models, that is also there, because I made sure that I got all my imports. If you look at the top there, from Django import models, that's there. That's why I'm deleting it, because I don't want to then import it twice. Okay, then basically we've copied everything that's in here. All right, so I'm going to let me just keep track of what my models are, resume, experience, and all of that. So I'm going to save this and click yes. And then one thing I always like to do before I forget is just to open your admin.py file. So let's just go admin.py. All right, and then just import the models in here so that they will show up in our admin panel. Okay, this is very, very important, and I just have to make sure that I get them. I get the sort of the thingy for it. Okay, so inside the admin.py file, I'm just going to say from .models. Okay, import. So I just want to import all my models in here. Okay, so the models I want is resume. Okay, I don't want to get the spelling wrong. That's why I'm copying and pasting it. Okay, then you have to say admin, which is the admin that you import at the top there. All right, so admin.site.register. All right, admin.site.register. All right, so you wanna register all of the models. Okay, so let's start with experience. All right, so let's then copy that. Let's copy that. All right, and then the next one we want to register is education. All right. Okay, and then obviously resume is the first one we want to register as well. Okay, open close in there and register. This is important. The only reason we're doing this is so that we can be able to sort of work with these models from the admin panel, and they'll be registered over there. Okay, so I'm going to just quickly save this. All right, and then let me just see ls. Let me cd out of here. ls. All right, so let's run that. Oh yeah, and how did I miss that? Okay, so when you're running migrations, it's checking everything. It's checking that your data set is done properly. So maximum length is actually and I get this error all the time, and I don't know why I miss this every single time. Okay, so I have to define maximum length everywhere there's a character field. All right, so let's do that. All right. So that's done. Let's clear this. Let's just cd. Actually, let's just let's just cd into users. All right, and then let's just remove the existing file so that we don't have to retype everything. So let's just rm models.py. Right, like that, models.py, and then you can just nano models.py. So that it's a blank file, and you can then paste everything we've done in there. All right, save all of that. Okay, and then let's cd out of there, and let's try running make migrations again. All right, so this time we ran make migrations without an issue, and I'm going to then run migrate. All right. Perfecto. All right, so we should actually be able to see off the admin panel our new data sets. Okay, our new and I like to do that as well to just make sure that everything has been done properly. So let's actually run this. Let's run this. Let's find our copy our run server. Let's run server. All right, and then let's go into the admin panel. Yes, I'd like to log in with a different username. All right. So now I've logged into the user username, because when you create users from the front end, the way we created Scholar, remember the last time using the registration page, you don't want each and every single user to be created as admin. It actually will not create every user as admin, because you don't want users to log into your admin panel. Okay, to get super users that are logged into your admin panel, you actually have to create them as super users. All right, so so that's why that username could not access the admin panel. Right, so let me just have a look over here. So we have jobs, we have resumes. Okay, let's have a look at resumes. That's the one I'm interested in. All right, so currently there's nothing in here. Okay, I just want to see if I had to add a resume, what it would look like. Okay, you'd have to specify who that resume is for. So you need, for example, your Scholar, and you're creating it for Scholar, you'd have to specify what is the unique ID. You can then choose the image, check the email confirmed, date of birth, the ethnicity. You can choose between all of that. You see that's the drop down: sex, male, female, other, marital status, single, widowed, whatever, address, line 1, line 2, city, province, Gauteng, phone number, Slug, date created, and you can specify when it in the last updated, and then you can choose whether you want to update a cover page or a CV or whatever. Okay, so far it looks like everything works well. Okay, and I don't want to enter this information on the admin panel. I just wanted to make sure that that all of that has been created properly, the way I wanted it to be, and I'm happy with what I'm seeing. So in the next part of the lecture, then we're going to talk about actually entering this information, creating the views for for editing. We're going to start with our CRUD: create, read, update, delete, for for the resume classes, and how that the class-based views work inside of Django. Just before we continue to creating our our resume form, I'd like to just point out a correction. I think at the bottom of this form, I had at the bottom of this form under here where you would be able to specify the last updated, when you're overriding the save method. And I had underneath here last updated to use the time zone .now up down here to every time that somebody saves, it would create a new last update. Okay, please remove that, because later on testing this I realized that that's an error, and it's going to give you an error later on. Okay, we're going to find a way to populate the last updated in the actual program itself, and we're not going to do it as part of overriding the save method, because when you're doing it over here, it's giving a lot of errors and it's going to create problems in the future. Okay, so that section over here, where I think I used to have, it was self.last updated. Okay, and then I had something like time zone.now, so that every time it would save it like that. So remove that. Okay, that's all I need to say about that. Now let's continue. Now that we've created our resume class, we need to go to working to creating our resume form. All right, and the way we're going to create the resume form is going to be very, very similar to how we created the register form. So if you're just starting with this tutorial with us right now, this is already like lecture 7. In the previous lecture, we went through the whole detailed process of creating a form using for the register when you were registering a user, and I went through the details of going through the fields one by one. Okay, I'm going to do the exact same thing now, but I'm going to go through it a little bit quicker. I'm going to assume that you went with us, you did the register class with us last week, or if you haven't, please go and view that video, because I don't want to spend too much time on this, because I've covered the foundations when I was doing the register form. Okay, so right now I'm going to go through it very, very quickly to save time. All right, so what I want to mention is this is the form that we're going to be using for registering our client. Okay, at the top you must import, we're going to build this in the same file that we built the the register form. So go into your file for the register form, and we're going to add a new form at the bottom that is called resume form. Okay, so it's going to be working off the same file, and at the top, from your imports, I just want you to add this little import at the top that says from models import resume, education, and experience. And I know we're not doing the education and experience form today because it's going to take us time. We're just going to work on the resume form itself, okay? So just import the resume form, but import the other ones just in case. And if you want to be really fancy, you can even do it like this, okay? Say from resume, import everything. But either way, make sure that you import everything that's inside the form, okay? Then after that, just very quickly, and this is easy to forget, class date input form is forms.date input, because we're going to have date inputs later on in our form when we're selecting the date of birth and all of that. And what I learned during the testing was that if you just use form.date input, it actually uses a type input of text. All right, and you don't want that, because you don't want when somebody's entering the date for them to enter it in a text format. Even if you give them the format and say, I want the format, for example, to be, because the option is that you give them the format and you say, please, the format, let it be 2001, 2002, month, year, or whatever, 07. Okay, the day and month. And you tell people, you can use this as sort of like a prompt text for them to figure out how to enter the date. People will still enter the date any way they want. Somebody else will come in there and say 3rd of March, 4th of March. Somebody else will do it the other way around, and they'll have the date at the beginning and the year at the end. Okay, so that's problematic. And when it comes to you managing your data later on and people have entered the date in different formats, you don't want that. Okay, so if you use the forms.date input the way it comes as a default from Django, it's going to actually render a text field, and then that allows users to enter the format whichever way they want, and we don't want that. Okay, so what you want to do to fix that very quickly is at the top, just input the date input class, which is going to come from forms.date input, and then just specify the input type to be date. This is just very quickly, and then when we use the date input widget later on, we are going to just sort of use this new class, not the forms.date input. You understand? Then at the bottom, let's just open that. Okay, so I've typed everything so that you don't have to do it in this video to save time, but I can just show you quickly how to do it. At the top, I've inputted all the options, and the options are exactly the same as the options that we had when we created our resume class the first time. So what you can do is that you can just copy all these options except for the images. Okay, you can just copy all these options like that, and then you can paste them over there, because we're going to be using the same options when we are rendering our drop down choices. Okay, then after you do that, we are going to specify each and every single variable one at a time. Okay, so make sure you don't leave anything out. Work from your class. Okay, so go to your class, and actually a good way to make sure you don't forget anything is to copy all of this and then make sure that you get all the different variables. Okay, so you have to specify all the different variables that have to go into the form. All right, and one of the best ways to do it is to copy from the class over here and then paste over there, and then obviously remove all the default things, because if you look at it, the image, yes, we want the user to be able to enter the image, but if you look at the image over here, all right, we have a default. So if the client didn't enter an image, they would get the default image, which obviously would be changed over here under when we're doing the, if the client didn't add an image, when we are saving it, the default image is going to be changed to random images between all the images that we have over there. So either way, it's up to you, but I'd like to copy and paste everything from there and continue that way. All right, so the image required is false. This is important. Okay, so with Django, if you don't specify required is false, the default will be required is true, and then when the client doesn't enter that information over there, it will it will sort of give the client an error that you didn't enter that, and they didn't know that it is not required. So even though you know that something is not required, you have to specifically say required is equals to false, so that Django doesn't force the client to have to enter that information. We didn't cover this when we did the register form, because all of our fields were required. So whether you had mentioned required or not, it would still sort of render it as required is true. So if you specifically want to give the client an option not to have to enter a field, you have to specify that the required is false. All right, so for the image field, we said required is false, and again the widget is going to be a file input. Okay, so even though this is an image field, we don't have an image input. We will use the file input, because the file input renders as the file input renders as as an input of type file. Okay, and you can I'm going to link this in the description below. All right. But there is the documentation on the widgets from Django, and you can see over there that when you go to file input, all right, and you select the file input, it renders as input of type of file. So even if you were inputting an image, it would be an input of type file, all right? So that's why we have it as file input, even though this is an image field. I know you would think that this would be now an image input. It actually is a file input. And then the reason why I did it like that from the previous lecture is so that we can specify the classes that we want to work with, and then over here you can then say classes form control. Okay, and how I got the classes that I'm going to be working with, you'll see that's form control, and over here you have nice select. The way I got these different classes is of the template that I'm using. All right, so for inputting our client resume, if we go back to our templates that we got, okay, so we remember we downloaded this from Render Forest, and we downloaded a where is it? Yeah, it's over here. So we downloaded all these files from Render Forest, and I'm gonna be working with the same files to create the forms that we're creating. Okay, so the file that I decided to work with is this file over here that is called create resume. Okay, so in your case you can go to that create resume file, and you can have a look at all the different sort of like how that create resume file is structured, and the forms that in there, and the sort of the classes that it's using. Okay, so you'll see that in the input, the class that it uses a lot is a class of a form control, but under select it has nice select rounded. That's where I got this class from. It's coming directly from this HTML file. Okay, and we're gonna get to this later when we're working on the HTML, but that's where I got these nice classes from. Okay, and so the date field, so we've covered the image field. The date field is slightly different. We have to use date input, and again you can go through the Django documentation, and you can figure out what is the correct sort of input that you want to use. And this date input, if you pay attention, it's not forms.date input like all these other ones. It's forms dot because it's importing it from forms, which is imported at the top over there. But the date input, if you recall when we started, I said you need to sort of modify the date input. So we created a new class called date input, and we are inheriting from forms.date input, and then we sort of modified it for the input type to be date. So the class that we're going to be using is this class that we have edited at the top over here. That is why that it's saying over there, it's just saying date input. Where is it? Date input, and not forms.date input. If you did that, it would be picking the original date input form, which would be like a text input, and you don't want that. You specifically want a date input. All right, and after that, ethnicity and sex and marital status, you recall these are choice or select fields. When we built the model over here for sex, marital status, and the ethnicity, we used a character field, but we had choices, and these choices is your ethnic choices over there, and they're the choices that you see over here. And I remember I told you to copy and paste these choices on the other side. Now when we render the form for that, we're not going to use character field. We're going to use what we call a choice field. Okay, and again you can get this off the documentation. You will see if you read the documentation what the choice field looks like. Okay, so for that we need a choice field, and then the choices, you need to specify the choices that must go into the choice field. And this is why I pasted the choices at the top, so that I can say choices is those choices: ethnic choices, sex choices, and marital choices. And then this way I can specify the attributes of the class. And the way we do that is we use forms.select, and there's different types of choice widgets, and again you can go through your documentation again to make sure, but the correct one to use, like you'll see here, there's a select date widget and all sorts of types of widgets, but in this case the widget that we need to use is just the select widget. And you can go through documentation again in your own time to figure out why I chose this type of select widget. Okay, and then that's where I'll specify the class. And then the address line 1, address line 2, all these other ones are just like what we did in the register form. They are just text inputs. So it's a character field, and the widget is a text input. Okay, so I won't go through that again. And then finally, the only thing I need to cover that's new is your file field. Okay, so this is very similar to what we did at the top when we did the image field. Okay, so the image is a forms.image field. And when you want people to sort of attach their CVs, it's going to be like a forms.file field, okay, instead of image field. But when it comes to the widget is a file input, okay? So that's the only difference. That's a file field and that's a file input, and then you can specify your class as a form control. All right, so once you've done that, you need to then go and do class meta. The model is resume, and then you're going to copy all the specific attributes that you want or fields that you want to be included in your form. So it's basically these fields over here, and there's fields that I don't have here, like fields like you'll see for example, the unique ID, okay? I don't have the unique ID here because I don't want the user to specify their own unique ID. I'm recalculating the unique ID myself in the background, okay? So the way I calculate the unique ID is down here in the save method. I override the save method and specify what the unique ID might be, okay? If the unique ID is none, and it will be none the first time because you'll see over there that is nullable and I haven't specified a default, okay? So when you save the first time, the unique ID will be null, and when it's null, I just want you to find the UID for split the first one and slugify all of that and okay, first of all, you need to set the unique ID. Okay, this is where you are setting the unique ID. Sorry, at the bottom here, you are setting the slug. Okay, the slug as well is another field that you'll see I don't include over there. I don't want the user to specify their own slug. I don't want the user to specify their own unique ID. Even the date created, I don't want the user to specify their own date created. I'm going to calculate it in the background, and you'll see the date created over there. I have it as a default of time a zone.now. So there are some fields from your model that you're not going to render in your form, okay? And those fields are going to be fields that you specifically want to calculate yourself, okay? For whatever purpose or reason you want to do that, you're going to either put it on the default, or you're going to do it when you override the save method to create those fields. And you can do it over here, or you can even do it in the form when the form gets completed, okay? Because for example, the user, all right, the user over here is a field that is required in the class, but I'm not going to specify that field when I'm saving, and I haven't specified it in the override save method, but I'm going to specify the user when I actually complete the form, because the user that completes the form is going to be the user that is associated with the resume, and in the save method I'm going to specify the user. So there are multiple ways that you can specify the fields. If it's easy for you to calculate the field like the unique ID or the slug, it might be easier to specify it in the save method so that it's done once, okay? But if it's something that is very unique, like the user, that you have to actually know who's the user when they're doing the form, then you're going to specify it in the actual request. When you're collecting the data, you're going to be checking who's the person that is sending you the form, and then you're going to specify who the user is at that time, okay? So it depends on the form and it depends on the variable how to specify that, okay? So very, very important here. One thing that I don't want you to forget, which gets me caught out sometimes, and I get a lot of errors and issues with that, is remember to specify required is false if it's not a required field. Django's default is not required false. Django's default is required true. And then on the other side over here, another thing that I think I've changed also in the background from the time we did this field together is when something is not required and you've specified required false in the form, please make sure that in the class itself, you add null is equals to true and blank is equals to true. This is very, very important. So for your unique ID, for example, although you are gonna specify it in the override of the save method, when the file is saved, this field is not going to be specified. All right. So when you save the file the first time, or when the form is submitted, let me rather say when the form gets submitted and the form is trying to sort of check for, validity, it doesn't know that you're still going to specify it when you're saving the data, okay? So if you haven't said that this thing can be nullable and it can be blank, it's going to assume that you didn't complete this field. And then it's going to assume that the form is not valid. So you won't even get to the point where you specify it in the save method, because your form is going to be returned as invalid because you haven't specified the unique ID. You understand? So the way to get around that is in the class itself, okay? And this was not there the last time when I showed you the class. I just added it now during the break. When I was working through this, you need to specify very, very distinctly null is equals to true, blank is equals to true, both of them. Okay, blank is equals to true, null is equals to true. And all the fields that can be nullable and all the fields that you want to specify later, or even if it's something like address line 2, where you can have address line 1 and address line 2 is optional. Some people only have like only 3 lines of address, the street, the suburb, and the whatever, the locality, and they don't have line 2, okay? So it's an optional field, okay? So you don't want people to have issues when they're trying to submit the form and it's busy telling them, oh, you need to specify address line 2. It's an optional field. So fields like that are going to be optional in your form, even though you'll specify over here that address line 2 is required is false, you need to also specify it in the class itself. So in the class, you also need to add null is equals to true, blank is equals to true. So I went through this again and I added all of these in all the areas where I want it to be nullable. Null is equals to true, unique ID, address line 1, I did it anyway, even though I know I'm going to have it required in the form. I don't want to have issues with the class, okay, because it's actually better to manage these things on the form, because once you have an issue in the class, you're going to be getting cryptic errors and trying to figure out why is this thing not saving. And the problem actually is that this is a required field from the class itself, okay. So if something is really not important, I'd rather have null true, blank true, but maximum length you must specify, and do all of that from the class, and then still manage it in the form, and then work it from there. So those are 2 important things. These are the kind of things that can give you problems, and you'll be trying to figure out where's the error, and you can't get it done, okay. So now we've got our form done. So what you need to do is you need to then copy all of this from the top to the bottom. All right. I've already done it off camera, but I'm just going to show you how to do this. And then you can stop your server. I'm going to clear this and ls and make sure that I'm in the directory where the manage.py file is. This is the root of my project, okay? So if I'm in the root of my project, I need to open the file that is called, so nano is for opening a file. I need to open a file inside of my users application, okay? So inside of users, and it's going to be called forums.py. Okay, you'll see we've seen this file before, but if you go to forms.py, in the last time we worked with forms.py when we created the register form, all right? Now we're going to work with forms.py. At the bottom of the register form, we're going to add our resume form, okay? So I've already done that. You copy and paste it. If you haven't done that, you can actually, instead of trying to work off of your VPS, all right, so Control X closes it. You can also just RM this to remove the existing file and then nano that and paste a new file. That's the fastest way. And then you make sure you type over here and you paste over there. Okay, so that's the first thing that you need to specify. All right. The second thing that we need to do is once we have done what we've done so far is we've done our class, all right, and done the resume class. We have now done the resume form. All right. Now what we need to do is to do the resume view, okay? The view that is going to create our form, all right? So this is a view that is going to display the HTML file that is going to show the form so that people can fill in. So we've done the form itself. We need to now do it in the view, all right? So again, like I usually do, I've typed the work already outside and I'm just going to try and show you what I've done in the background so that I'm in here first and then I will copy and paste it into our VPS later on, okay? So our views.py file, this views.py file, we had a register view before. This is the view that we worked with the last time when we were doing the the registration form, all right? So underneath the register form, we recently in this lecture, actually we created the profile view, okay? And we showed you how to import the login required decorator and we added the login required decorator over there, all right? So underneath the profile view, all right, we're going to create a new view, and that view we're going to call it create resume view, okay? And it's going to take in a request object, okay? This view is going to be very similar to the view at the top when we did the register, okay? It has both a request and it has both a post and a get request because it's going to be a view that processes a form, okay? So we are going to process our resume creation form, this form that we just built over here. We're going to process it. So when the user first requests the page or request the view, it's going to show them a blank form. And when you show them a blank form, that is like the user is actually processing a get request. So they're going to go to the URL and look for create new resume, whatever. So they're going to be doing a get request. Okay, so you have to handle what happens when you get a get request on that route. Okay, then after they complete the form, they will enter all the form details, blue blue blue, enter 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 enter. Then they'll submit the form. When they submit that form is then going to be submitted as a post request on the same route. Okay, so you have to then manage and handle that data that comes from the form. So this is why you have two types of requests. You have the get and the post request, and every time you have a form, you have to manage both requests. You'll see over here with the profile, there is no form over there. It's just a get request. Then you don't even have to specify if this is a get request. You just render the file as it is, and that's it. And if you have any variables you want to render in the context, you'll render them. But in a specific case where you have a post and a get request, it's better to specify what happens if it's a post request, what happens if it's a get request. In fact, you can assume that the default is a get request and then have a specific if it's a post request. But in my case, just for clarity and specification, I want to specify both of them separately. Okay, so just like we did the register form, we're going to have a if the request is post and if the request is get. Okay, so if the request is get, let me just handle that first. Okay, so if the first time the user requests that page and they're running a get request, okay, what are we going to do? We're going to specify what is the form. Okay, the form is the resume form, and for you to specify that, you must make sure you import the resume form at the top. So what I done over there, I just said from.forms import wildcard. So what this does is that all the forms that I have in the .form, it's going to get imported over here, and the same with the models. Okay, this is when you have multiple models, instead of typing them all out one by one, you can do that, or you can just use wildcard. Okay, from forms I brought from models, and then I can just work off of it like that. Okay, so I've imported it at the top over there. Then I can say on the get request, I can say this is a resume form. Okay, that's where I'm over here. Okay, that's the resume form. So once I've done that, for a get request, it's pretty simple. If it's a get request, you want to show the resume form. You want to just specify what the context is, and then what the context is, and then return, the render and the request object, and then the HTML that you're going to be working with. So we haven't created this HTML yet. We are going to create it now. All right, it's going to be pretty simple to create, but I'll show you how to do it. Okay, so we're going to create this HTML, and then we're going to pass through the context. And by passing through the context, actually, you're just passing this object form. So you could actually just copy this and paste that in there and remove that whole context variable. It doesn't matter, but you can do it this way as well. All right, so this is what will happen when you process a get request. When you process a post request, okay, then you have to do a couple of things. A post request, you're going to have some data in the request.post. Okay, so the first thing that you're going to do, again, you're going to specify the form. All right, you're going to specify the form and say the form is the resume form. It's the same as the resume form, but this time the form actually has request.post or request.files. Okay, so this is the difference between this and your register form. In your register form, you only had request.post because you were only just processing normal data. Okay, in this specific form, you'll see I've added request.files, and this is easy to forget, and I actually forgot it the first time I did this. Okay, so you need to also add request.files. Why? Because our form, if you look at our data, our form has some file inputs. Okay, it has a file field over there, it has a file field over there, and it has an image field, which is also a file input. So these file inputs, you're going to have to specify on the form enc type, is equals to file wara wara. So that form actually is going to be taking in some data in the form of some file data. All right, so you need to then have request.files, because the files are going to be in the request.files object, and then the sort of the rest of the fields are going to be in the request.post. So you need both of these. Okay, if you don't include request.files, you will this will not get the files, and then you will just assume that the files were not submitted, and you're going to keep getting an error about the files, or you won't see where the files ended up. Okay, so it's very, very important not to forget that. And then once you've done that, you're going to say if the form is valid. All right, if the form is valid, this means if it has passed all of the validation. This is very, very important to do the validation, because you need to make sure that the validation is going to cover things like all the required fields, especially when you say required is equals to true, they are all in there. And even if you had them inside of your class, All right, the required fields are there. All right, so it will cover all of that and make sure that all of those are valid, and also the length and all the things that you would have specified as validation for your form, that all of that has been covered. Then if the form is valid, usually we would say, if the form is valid, form.save. Right? But in this specific case, remember, we need to specify the user, all right? Because I said to you, the user, we could have done it over here if it was possible when we were creating our class in overriding the save function, like we specified all the other variables. So you could also specify other variables in here, all right? I mean, in there, but because we need to know who the user is, all right, we can't specify the user anywhere else. You have to specify them inside of the request, because the user object exists only inside of the application, all right? So inside of the application context. So inside of the request, of the application context, the request.user is the current user who is logged in. And remember, because we have said this is a login required path, no one will be able to access this path if they have not logged in. So we will always have a request.user. It won't be null. Okay, so you don't even have to say if request.user is not null. You don't even have to do that check, because that check is covered over here by login required. So we know that it will have a user variable, and that user can be accessed from the request.user. Okay, so then we can specify the user in the form before we actually submit the form. And the way to do that is, you need to create an object. It can be anything. You can call this variable anything, okay? But I decided to call it obj. Okay, call this variable and save the form initially without committing the form. Okay, so you're still running the save without committing the form, all right, so that you can get this object. All right, once you have the object, then you're going to say object.user is the request.user. So you are specifying the user inside the form. And once you've done that, then you save it. And this time you don't put committed equals to false. This time you actually commit it. Then only when you commit it does it run the super function. Does it run all of this, what you have in there. So you've already now specified the user, and then it will specify the unique ID, the image, and all of that, the slug and all of that. And then it will add all of that to the object, and then it will save it. And then you will pass to the client messages, success, resume has been created successfully. Okay, remember we had these messages at the top over there, but I think I need to explain again how this works. The messages, first of all, you must import the messages from the top there. So you must say from Django contrib import messages. All right, so once you've imported messages at the top, then you can talk to messages. So you have messages.success. Okay, you have messages.error, and I think this is a bit of a challenge, because in Django we actually in Django you have to use messages.error, but in Bootstrap it's actually messages. Bootstrap, the Bootstrap class for red is danger, not error. So that's why sometimes when you're using messages.error, you actually don't get the red color out of the whatever. But it doesn't matter. We will fix that later. We'll figure out how to do that. We will say if it's error, then do something else. But nonetheless, you need to import the messages at the top. Okay, once you've imported the messages at the top, you need to specify the type of message that it is: success, error, info. And according to Bootstrap classes, success would be green, error would be red, or should be red, even though the red is actually danger in Bootstrap. Info is going to be blue and whatever. So the type of message that you want to give to the client, give it a color, and then type in what exactly must be included inside of the message. Once you've done that, you need to actually render this inside of the form. Okay, and I know we didn't do it in the last lecture, right? So I'm going to show you quickly how to do it in this lecture. And the best place to do it is in the layout form. I think that's why we didn't do it last week, because we need to put it inside of the layout form, all right? So let's do that quickly. So our layout form is inside the project directory. So we're going to open it. Nano is to open the layout form. And then we need to go to the project directory, which is called app, all right? And inside of the project directory, we need to go into the templates. All right, because the layout form is in the template, and then we need to open the form itself is layout2.html. All right, so let's open up this form, and at the top of the form, just before block body, because this is the overall encompassing layout form, it's what other people call the base template. Okay, the base template is for me my layout template. I decided to call it layout instead of base. It's the same thing. So this is my base template, where this is where the class meta is going to go in, and this is where sort of the class body is gonna go in, and just before the class body, right at the top there, all right? And I don't even know how this is going to display, and probably not right, and then we'll style it later if it doesn't display quite the way that we want it to display. You need to then say if messages, all right? And the messages, object is going to be passed on anyway in Django. You don't have to specify it on your views that please pass the messages. All right, it exists inside of the context already. All right, so if messages, then you're going to say for message in a messages, and this messages is something that will get displayed only once. So only when you specify please display the messages, like what we're doing here, messages.success, it will be displayed only in this path. Okay, if you restart this page and you go over there, the messages don't get displayed. So it's something that gets displayed only when the messages exist. All right, so if the messages exist, for a message inside the messages, so you're gonna loop through the messages list. Okay, so go through the entire messages, and for each and every single message, I want you to display an alert, a bootstrap alert. So this is how you specify a bootstrap tablet. Bootstrap alert. It's a div of class alert, space alert minus whatever the type of alert. So it could be alert danger, alert success, alert info, whatever. And depending on the alert type that you're displaying, the color will be different. So if you wanted to display alert success, you know it's going to be a green color. And then, but because we don't know what alert type is going to be when we're writing the HTML, we actually can access the type of alert from messages.tags. All right. So this, not messages, message.tag. For message in messages, message.tag is going to have the type of alert. So in this specific case, where our alert is success, it will be alert success, and then you'll get the green alert, and then inside of the alert you'll have the messages, right? And I think over here, I need to have another if. So this is where I want to specify, because with Bootstrap, you actually have alert danger, okay, not alert error. Okay, so what I need to say in here to cover that, and let me think, and I'm thinking out loud as I'm writing over here, okay? So I need to say perhaps if. So inside of the message, okay? So if this message.tags, right? If message.tags, right, is equals to, okay, yeah, if messages.tags is equals to error, all right? So if the tag is error, instead of now rendering alert error, because we know alert error does not exist, okay? If message.tag is equals to alert.error, I want you to display, so I'm going to copy all of this, okay? All right. If it's alert error, I want you to display alert danger. All right. So if messages.tags is equals to error, I want you to display an alert of alert danger, right? Then after you've done that, you can actually have the else. So I have 2% signs. Okay, else display whatever you're displaying, and before the end for, you're gonna have an end if, right? Don't worry, I'm gonna go through this again quickly so that you don't get confused. There's a couple of things we're doing here. So maybe let me leave some space here so that you can see, yeah, so that this can render, so you can sort of see what we're doing here. Okay, let me remove that. All right. So if you have messages, we will iterate through the message list. Okay, and this first if, we end it over the end if. So every time you have an opening block, you have to have a closing block for it. So if messages, that's the end if for the first if. We're going to go through all the messages for message in messages and check them. So as we're going through all the messages, okay, if we come across a message where the message tag is error, okay, we are going to display an alert danger instead of alert error, because what this would have done is to display alert error and then the color doesn't show. Okay, if a message tag is error, we're going to display alert danger but show the message, okay? Else is that if it's not error, we're just going to display alert tag and whatever it is. So if it's not error, it's either going to be success, info, or whatever, all right? And then display the message, and then that is the end if for that, all right, for that if, all right? And this is the end for that for, all right? So let's close that and click yes. That's all right. All right, so we've covered the messages. All right, and then when we're done with all of that, I want you to redirect us back to the profile page. All right, so once we have completed sort of processing the form, it should take us back to the to the profile page. But if the form is not valid, all right, if the form is not valid, it's going to enter into this other block, which is the else block. If the form is not valid, then I want you to display for me messages error. This is what I was talking about. It has messages error, not messages danger. All right, messages error. Then I want you to just say to me error processing my request, and then I want you to just send me back the form. And by this time, inside of the form object, you will have a form.errors, and then we'll be able to display what our errors is so that we can deal with whatever the errors are. So this part of the form is just exactly the same as what we did over there. And I just want to delete this print because we don't need that print anymore. All right. So once we've done that, I'll go through this resume detail later. I just want to focus on this for now, right? So once you've done all of this, all right, then you can copy all of that and then paste it inside your virtual server, all right? The next thing that I want to talk about, we've now dealt with the class, we've dealt with the form, we've dealt with the view. What we need to deal with now is this HTML page that is going to display the view. Okay, now you need to go and build your own HTML. It's up to you how you want to build it. You can just create an HTML form with a form or use whatever styling that you have. But if you want to follow along with me, what I've done is that I've worked off this create resume HTML page. All right, and if you look at the create resume HTML page, it has a lot of stuff, and I think I've already changed it so you won't see what was there before, but it had a lot of like field areas that I deleted. All right. And what I also did was that then the create resume form, I also used layout 2. Okay, so I used layout 2, and this is what it looks like over there. Okay, new resume. So I used layout 2, so I said extends layout 2, and then I added obviously the block meta at the top, and then I have the block body. And the block body is where I'm going to have my form, all right? And if you can copy off the original create resume file, you will see there is a section at the top for the breadcrumbs. Okay, so I copied that section for the breadcrumbs with create resume, home, profile, and then I just added the URLs for home, which is just a slash because home is just the home page. And then the URL for profile is like the URL profile, and this profile must match what you called it inside of your urls.py file. Okay. And then I added the create resume so that if people want to navigate, they can navigate obviously create resume, home, profile. And the breadcrumbs are really useful for navigating through a website. And if my template has the breadcrumbs, I always use it. Okay. Then after that, then I added a new section, and in that section I just have like, you know, a container, and then I have rows and columns for the form. That's all I'm doing here. So there's nothing fancy about this. I'm just displaying a form over here. All right. So inside of the form, remember, this is the opening bracket for the form, all right, and the end closing bracket for the form is right at the bottom there. Okay, so make sure you have the opening and the closing brackets, and then make sure you have method is equals to post. Don't forget this, and make sure you have enc type multi-part form data in the form, because we are attaching files in this form. If you don't have this, the files will not get attached, and you're going to have an error, okay, and you're going to have issues, and you're going to be trying to figure out and troubleshoot this error, and after maybe 2 days of Stack Overflow, then you'll figure out, oh no, I forgot enc type. Okay, then after that, also make sure you have CSRF token. These lines here, if you get anything wrong within these lines, you're just going to have issues and problems that you will be trying to troubleshoot for days, okay? So do not forget these. Once you have these, then everything here is pretty much optional how you want to display it. So all of these here, you can do it how you want, okay? So the way I have it is like I have a row, okay? And then inside the row, the first column, I just put in general information because I'm going to sort of render the first part of the form as general information. And these are the things like, I want to display things like my date of birth, ethnicity, sex, marital status. I want to show all of this separately as general information. And then I want to show the other ones, address, suburb, city, province, whatever, cover letter, as, you know, personal info, as address. Okay, so I want to have this as an address, and then I want to have this general information. It's up to you how you want to display the form. When it comes to this part of the tutorial, it's really up to you, and depending on whatever template you're using, however the styling is there, just use that. Okay, and if you want to use our template, you can follow along with this, and I'll make this available sometime. But you know what I've done is that I have, obviously, these are the classes from the form, all right, and then I have the column. All right, and at the top I've done the fields errors. I tried to do this without the errors, and then I was having cryptic errors and I couldn't figure out what's the problem. So just just copy and paste from last week's tutorial, what we had at the top there, the column 12. All right, these are the field errors. Just make sure you display it like this. This is very, very important. If there's errors in the form, it will display the form with an alert danger. This is all this is doing at the top, and it's exactly what we did in last week's tutorial. So you can double check that as well for a more detailed explanation. All right, and then after that, we are gonna then put in the different form sections one by one, and this again is exactly like what we did in last week's tutorial. Okay, so inside of a column, all right, I just have the div for the form group, all right, and then I have the label, and the label, I'm not rendering the label like in the Django form format. I'm actually labeling it the way I want to put it, like with the label and text muted, so that I can style the way the label looks like. All right, and then the only thing I need to then specify is the form.image, and this is the input that would have gone in there. Okay, so for the input, you need to be specific, the form dot whatever the field of input that you want it to be rendered there. So in this case, there's an image, the date of birth. So these inputs are exactly the same as the inputs you have here. Image, date of birth. So you'll say form.image, form.ethnicity, form.sex for the different, wherever you want to display the sex input. And that sex input would be like the way you've defined it over there with the text input and whatever, or in this case, it's a choice. Let me just have a look. Yeah, it's a choice field with a choice select. So you've already done sort of the HTML styling on your form, all right, where you've specified the class and the choices and all of that. So the only thing you need to then do inside of your HTML form is just to say, whatever it is, form.date of birth. That's all you say. Okay, and the reason why I've done it the long winded route instead of just putting form as P like what other people do is I want to style it the way I want to style it. I want to decide where I want the different fields to go, and I want to decide, I want it in a column, I want it in a row, wherever I want to put it, and I want to put this on top of that one. And so if you want to do it like that, then you have to manually render each and every single field separately. And then if you're rendering each and every single field separately, you also have to render the errors, or you have to display the errors. Okay, so at the bottom of your field, whatever it is, then you're going to say if form.date of birth. So if that field has errors, okay, and for all the errors in that field, I want you to display that error. That's all we're doing here. And for more details, I won't discuss this in detail. Have a look at last week's tutorial. I think I explained a lot of this in a whole lot of detail, okay? So once we've done that, that's the form done, okay? That's the form done. The sort of the things that can catch you in the form, because I don't want to explain the form in detail, I just touch through quickly the areas where you might have issues, where it might catch you out, and where you usually people make mistakes is forgetting that, and forgetting that. And obviously forgetting to render a field that is a required field, because that happens to me as well, where I have a field over here that I've said it's required, even if it's not required, but I've specified it on the list over there. And because I've specified it on the list, for some reason, if it's a long form like our form that we're doing, I forget to render it over here. Like I had forgotten to add the image. And then you're going to have errors and you have no idea where the error is. But the problem actually is that you forgot to render a specified field that you have to. So when you do things manually, there's more possibility of you coming across errors. So check for that. Check that each and every single field that you have specified in here, that you have specified over there, that you have created a widget for, make sure that you do not forget to render that specific field inside of your HTML form. Those are the only things you have to watch out for. If you do all of that right, your form should be good to go. All right, and then you're going to copy this whole form the way that it is. You're going to come over there and remember what you called it. You called it create resume.html. All right, you're going to go to you're gonna say nano. All right, you're going to go to the users app, because it's a form or it's an HTML form that sort of works with users. Okay, you're going to go to users app, you're going to go to templates inside of them, and then you're going to create, whatever you've called this, create resume.html, like that. You're going to paste that in there, and then you're going to open it up, and then you're going to paste your form over there. All right, that's all you have to do. Then once you've done that, you're going to say Control X, and then your form is there. But you're not ready to actually display your form. You can't display it yet because you don't have a root for it. Okay, so the last thing that you need to do, these are the 4 steps of Django. All right, the 4 steps of Django, and maybe let me put it in here so that you don't miss it. All right, The 4 steps of Django. So let me copy this. Not that. I want to copy this entire slide. All right, and I'm going to call this the 4 steps of Django. All right, the first one is you need to create the model. After you create the model, you're going to create the form. Okay, after you create the form, you're going to create the view. All right, so it's not even the 4 steps of Django, it's the 5 steps of Django. Okay, after you created the view, right, there's another step, so let's make this shorter. Right, delete that, let's copy that, put it over there. Right, put the form over there, put it over there, and I put the views over there. All right, so you're going to create the views, and then after the views, you're going to do the HTML file. All right, where are we now? The HTML file, yes. And then after that, you're going to do the URL parts. Okay, so every time you are coming up with a new, whether it's a new model or a new, like what we're doing, we wanted to do the resume model. Okay, we started by creating the model itself. All right, and after you create the model, you have to run make migrations. Okay, so after this, don't forget to run. So let me just add some text there. All right, and you need to run make migration. You need to register the model in your admin file. Okay, this is very, very important. Okay, and every time you make changes to the model file, you need to run make migrations again. You don't have to register it again, but you have to run make migrations again. So in our case, like, I know that I made some changes over here in the model, specifically when I was adding the null is equals to true, blank is equals to true, because we didn't have this before. So if you're following with me just a couple of minutes ago, and I didn't have null true, and I realized I need to edit because my form was giving me problems, then I went and I changed all of that. Every time you make a change to your model file, whatever the change, even if you've done the change here on the save method, you need to go back and run make migrations. Okay, so this is very important. So work on the model, then you run make migrations. Every time you make changes to the model, you need to run make migrations and migrate again. Once you've worked on the model, then you work off the form. The form talks to the model. All the fields inside the model must be represented in the form, except fields which you're going to automatically create, like your unique ID or the user or whatever. Then you don't need those fields in the form, but you have to know how you're going to populate the fields. Okay, you're either going to populate them by overriding the save method, or you're going to populate them inside of the view when you're creating the save. When the form is been submitted, then you're going to specify all those additional fields that you want. Okay, now once you've done the view file, all right, so the view is done, then you go and you work off your HTML file. And this can be the other way around. So it's up to you. You could do the HTML file before you do the view file. It doesn't really matter. Or this can be done all at the same time. It doesn't really matter. But I like to do my view first. And then after I've done my view, then I want to work on my HTML file, because the HTML file is the one that gets rendered from the view. Okay, so you could build the HTML file first of all and figure out what you need, because everything that you need for your HTML file must be supplied from your view. So your form, for example, when you specify in your HTML file form dot, this is my HTML file. Every time I say form dot, all of this is rendered from the view. So maybe you want to build the HTML file first. It's up to you how you want to do it. Okay, then the last thing, all right, the last thing that you're going to do is your URL part. Okay, the URL part is what tells the Django application how to navigate to this view that you've just created. Okay, so I've created a view now for for the form. All right, so for me to navigate to that view, I need to create a URL path for it. So I need to say this is the URL that you're going to need to do to supply to the app to get you to this view. So the URL path talks to the view as well. So inside of the URL form, you import your views, and the views are the ones that are talking to the form and to the model, but the URL path is sort of the thing that connects everything together to the application and how to actually display this. So that's what we're going to do next. We've done the HTML, and now we need to do the URLs. Okay, so to get to the URLs, from the root of the directory, you just open the file by saying nano. It's going to be the URL file is always in the project directory. Okay, so my project directory is called app. And instead of the project directory, the file is called urls.py. All right, so this I don't have to retype anywhere else because it's usually just one line and I can just do it from here. All right, so what I'm gonna put in here is I'm gonna create a new root that is called users create. All right, so this root is called users create. And I've decided to call it users create. You can call it anything you want, but it makes sense for you to call it users create because users is the application of users, and then this is when you want to create a new user. All right, so users create. All right, and then I want to the users views create resume. This is the view. So remember what I said, the view that talks to the form and the model is the one that you need to include in the URL path. So that's that view over there, and this is exactly how we've done it with all the other ones. And the view is users view is imported at the top there, and users view, the function inside the users view that we need to talk to is the create resume function. And the create resume function is this function that we just worked with right now. It's this function, create resume. Okay, so when you import this file, this whole file as users view, you want users views dot this create resume function. So you are telling Django that when somebody goes into this root, I want you to run this function. So I want you to run this function for this root. That's all this is doing. And then after that, then you give it a name, create resume. This is just to help you when you're building a URL path to create that path. So that is all you have to do. All right. And we can test this right now. Okay. And of course, I've already created this. I've already saved it. You can go to users.create. Actually, let's do that now. So let's run our application. Okay. So how I'm going to run this, let me just copy this. All right. And then I want to go to with my app. This is not it. All right. So currently users.create, I'm not logged in. So let's just test it because we did say it's a login function, so you have to be logged in. So let's test it. All right. Users.create. Okay. So let's try and go to that path. All right, it's gonna tell me to log in because I'm not currently created. I'm not logged in because I've put in the login required, decorator at the top. So I have to log in before I can access that root. Okay, and what I wanted to show you over here at the top as well is if you're trying to access a root and you were sent to the login page because you have not logged in because the root requires a login, you will see at the top there on the URL path that it will tell you the next. So it will remember which path you are trying to get to. So this is really useful in Django, and it comes built in out of the box. If you're working with something like Flask, for example, and that is very lightweight, you would have to write code. Because I remember having to write this type of code in the past. You would have to write code that tells the application to remember what route were they trying to access the first time when you write your decorator, so that it remembers that this is the route you were trying to go to. So this will be the next after that. But luckily for Django, this is the type of boilerplate you wouldn't have to write. And that's why I think this is useful for beginners. I know a lot of people think Django is complicated for beginners because it has so many moving parts. And Flask, for example, is easier for beginners. But actually, Flask is harder for beginners than Django. Even though Django has a lot of moving parts, a lot of those parts are pre-coded for you. And they are required parts of an actual proper web application. So something like the next routing is a required part of a proper web application. That if you were building an application in Flask, for example, you wouldn't even know that I need to code this, because it's not coded for you automatically. And to write the code for this is like 20 lines of code of building a decorator to do this for you, right? But it's already pre-done for you in Django. So even though you have to remember a lot of things in Django, like remember models, forms, what I like about it is that a lot of the stuff is built into Django, and you don't have to do a lot of boilerplating. You have to follow the structure, but you don't have to do a lot of the lines of code you have to do in a Django app is like a fraction of the lines of code you would have to write in a Flask app if you wanted the Flask app to do the exact same thing Django is doing. Trust me on this one. Django is easier for beginners despite popular belief, right? Then, so I'm going to log in here. Let me just hope I remember my password. It's Colo. All right, so let me log in. So now that I've logged in, it takes me to the create resume. It remembered this is a page that I was trying to go to, okay? So this is the form that I've built, okay? It took me a while to build it, but I'll make the code available. But you can do it as well. Use whatever template you want to use. It's up to you, but the way I've shown you how to do it, you're going to be able to specify the different sort of all the different variables of the form separately so that you can have the label the way you want it with the star, a red star at the top, the label the way you want it. And you want to have this in like a column, and this is a row 6, or this is like a row, and this is a column 6, column 6, column 6, column 6. That's a column 12. That's column 6 all the way, and this is where you attach your stuff. And this is all form control styling, and you can see form control styling is really amazing. And if you're using Bootstrap, you might want to go with form control. But if you had downloaded your own template from wherever it is you have downloaded it from, I've done it from ThemeForest. You can download it from Enviro, whatever template that looks amazing that you will be able to show to a client. You're building a client app. That form would come with that template would come with its own styling. So you can specify your own styling when you build a Django form the way I'm showing you how to do it. Okay. So the form is good, right? But before I do this, I want to show you quickly how to do this at the top. I did this off camera. Remember, we only had the profile button, okay, that takes you to the profile page. All right, we didn't have a logout button. And if somebody is logged in, you want to give them the option to log out. You don't want them to go and have to type logout at the top over there. All right, so I've just added next to the profile button a button that says logout. Okay, and I added this on the layout template. All right, so let's stop this and have a look at the layout template. All right, so let's clear all of that. And let's see where we are. Okay, so we need to open Nano Scholar app because my layout template is saved inside my project directory. So I need to go to Scholar app. I need to go to templates. Then I need to go to layout2.html. Make sure you get the spelling right. If you get the spelling wrong, it will open a blank. It will just open a blank. Yeah, so I got the spelling wrong. So let me look at it again. It needs to be layout2.html. Right. Yeah, there you go. So this is the template at the top there. So the only thing I added, to save you some time, I did it off camera. I added the roots because we didn't have the roots before. The href was reading nowhere. So I added, for the profile button, which is this button over here. All right. I want it to take you to the profile page. You'll see at the bottom here. I want it to take me to the profile page if you hover over it. So I added the URL for profile. And the way you do it, you just say URL profile. Profile is what I've called it inside of the URL file. Okay. So inside of the URL file, I called it profile. So you just say URL profile inside of exclamation marks, like as a string. So this whole thing is like a Python code block, right? The moment you have curly braces and percentage signs, you are writing Python code. So if you're writing Python code, URL is actually a variable, right? But profile is a string, all right? So you have the variable URL, and the variable URL is like this URL object that comes from the URL file, okay? So it's an object, it's a variable, but then the profile is the name of the URL path that you have called it inside the urls.py file. Okay, that's why you have to have it inside of marks like a string, because it's a name, it's a string variable, right? So you do the same for the logout. I just copied and pasted that over there. All right, and I know I have it both as account, and when I have time, I'll change whatever that this should be. And this is my material icons, I think, MDI. All right, so you can go through this and figure out what sort of icon you want over there. I'm not going to do it now on camera, but you can do it in your own time. But then I just added, if the user is authenticated, I want to show both the profile and the logout button. So I want the user to be able to navigate to the profile page and to be able to log out if they are authenticated, which means they are logged in. And if they are not authenticated else, then you will show the user the register button for them to be able to register or to log in. So if they're authenticated, they can go to their profile or they can log out. If they're not authenticated, they can register. And I know I have it as buttons for now. Maybe later on you'll want to show the profile page instead. The profile picture, but we can fix that later. So for now, we can close that, and that's what I've done there. And the next thing that I want to do is now, when a user creates a profile, they won't know that they must go to users create path. How will they know to go to this path for them to create a profile. Okay, so it's actually better for you to build a URL path, or for you to build them a link from your profile page. So if they go to your profile page currently, okay, so I've stopped the app, so let me just run it again. Okay, so if you go to your profile page, because you must think about how the user is going to navigate through your application. Okay, so let's say you were on your home page, right, like that. You're on your home page, and then the user is like, oh, I wanna enter my resume so that I can also be in this nice application, and then people can figure out how to find me, job people, whatever, da 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 da. Oh, let me go to my profile page. That's the first thing they're gonna think of doing. Or maybe you'll have a button at the top there that says create, add a resume, but it's probably better to say profile. And then when you go to the profile page, then you can give them the option to create a resume. Before, this was not linked to anything. It was just, these were all blank buttons. Okay, so this is a good place for you to add a route that says create a resume. All right, so let's go to our profile HTML form. All right, so we can close this, and we can go to Nano. It's inside for the users app, and it's inside of the template, and it's profile .html, right? So inside of the profile.html, you have all the different buttons. All right, so all I did was to say create a resume, the create resume path. All right, so at the top there, at the top here, this create resume button is this create resume button. All right, so for this create resume button, I just added the href to be URL for create resume. Okay, so you might ask, but then what is this other one, resume detail? Okay, so after they've created a resume, so let's say they go to create resume like that. Okay, so they can't because I've stopped the app, so it doesn't matter. But assume the app was working and I went to create resume and you saw that form. Okay, when they finish building that form, they want to view what they've just entered. Okay, so every time you create a form, in parallel to creating a form, I also want to create the page that displays all the data that has been created inside of the form. So I want to display the data for the resume. All right, so you can call it, like in Django, it's called like a detail page, like a sort of a class detail view page, right? So that is a page that they'll be able to go to once they've created a resume. So what I have over here is, okay, if the user.resume, right? So what this will do is that if user.resume, the current user, remember the user function, the user variable is available on the front end of the Django app. If the user.resume, if the user has a resume, and think about it like this, and it's going to be confusing, but I'm going to try and explain it the best way that I can. When we created the resume class, right, we had user model as a one-to-one field. Each and every single user will have a resume, okay? And a resume will not be created without being attached to a specific user. But a user can be created when you first create a user the first time and you don't assign a resume to the user. So you could have a user that just created a profile, a user profile, like they just logged in and joined your app, but they haven't created a resume yet. So you can have users that don't have resumes, but you'll never have resumes that don't have users, okay? So you can always check if a specific user has a resume. So you can say user.resume to try and figure out if that user has a resume. You understand what I'm saying? So that's what we're doing here. We're saying if the user has a resume, I want you to show the view resume block. Okay, so I want you to be able to view their resume. And to view their resume, you're going to be able to see the detailed resume, all right? But, okay, if the user does not have a resume, okay, so user.resume is null, doesn't exist, okay, then I want you to show the create resume button so that the user can go and create their resume. That's all we're doing here. But now we haven't done this detailed view resume path yet, but we're going to get to it, all right? So at least now you can see what we're doing over there to show the button that shows how to take the user to create a resume, because a user won't be able to type for themselves or use resume, whatever. They won't know where to go to. So you have to sort of navigate the user there. You can do it this way, or you can create a button at the top there that says create a resume, which in a lot of applications they've got, So next to the profile page, you have another button that says create resume, or you have it inside of your menu. It's up to you how you do it, okay? So I'm going to close this, and then I'm going to run this, all right? And then I'm going to then refresh this page, all right? And then I'm going to take you to create a resume, all right? All right, and then you're going to be able to test this create a resume form. All right, now before we do that, testing the form, I want to now build the detailed page that we're going to be able to go to once we've created the form. All right, so for that, it's actually very, very simple how to do that. So let's close this. All right, let's clear this. All right, and let's say nano. We're gonna just start by creating a view. All right, because we don't need a class or anything like that. We don't have to follow the entire process for that. We already have a model. We already have a form. We just need to create a view for viewing the detailed page. All right. So for that, we're gonna say nano users use.py, and so control X to close this. And this needs to be views.py, okay, not view. There it is. All right, so when you go to, you might have noticed this before. All right, I didn't talk about it, but it was always here on the file. Okay, so we have a new class here that is called class resume detailed view. All right, this resume detailed view is just what I chose to call it. I want to create a detailed view to be able to see the detailed resume of the detailed resume class. All right, and it's going to inherit from detail view. So this is what we call in Django class-based view functions. Okay, these are class-based view functions. This is a function-based view view function over here. Class-based view function. This is a function-based view function. So it's a function, okay, based view. And this is a class-based view, all right? Class-based view are very useful in Django, and they require much less coding than function-based view. So you can use whichever one makes sense to you. In this specific case, I wanted to use a function-based view specifically because I want to do a lot of things to the function, right? And I want to figure out if forms are not valid. I want to do a lot of things. I want it to be more specific, and you can change it later on if you want and you think this is not necessary. But when you have something like as simple as I just want to see the detailed view page, I just want, and then I'm going to design the HTML the way that I want to design the HTML, it's just better to use a class-based view that Django provides. These are one of the usefulnesses of Django. Hence, I like to say it is actually easier to use than Python, because you would write a lot of code. Than Flask, for example, because you would write a lot of code for Flask. And a Flask view is similar to a function-based view. A Flask doesn't have class-based views. You have to use always function-based. But Django, you have the option of function-based if you want to be a little bit more specific, or you want to sort of tailor things the way that you want. You want to write functions. If you really like to do that, you can. But you also have the option of 2 lines of code to display a view. All right. Now, this resume detail view, you see it inherits from detail view. So we have to import detail view, all right? So at the top there, we've imported detail view from Django.views.generic, import detail view, okay? So just write that, type that as it is. Django.views.generic, import detail view. All right, and then this detail view is the extension. We use that inside the resume detail view. This is just what we chose to call our function. And then the only thing you need to specify is the model. The model is resume, and then you need to specify the template name so that I can find the template that you're talking to. Okay, and my template name is going to be resume detail.html. I haven't created this template yet. I'm going to create it, but it can be as simple as it's just an HTML template that you want to display. Your username, your surname, your image, whatever, your resume details, everything that you've entered, you're going to do it in there, all right, in the detail view. So that's all you do here. And once you've done the view, all right, and we haven't done the HTML file, so let's quickly do the HTML file, all right? So the HTML file, I don't know if I have it in here. I don't, but let's have a look because I think I have this HTML file already saved in here. So let me do X, let me not save this. And then I'm gonna go open nano, users, templates, and I'm going to open the template that is called resume detail.html. Okay, I do have it already. I'm also extending layout 2, and then I'm putting in the meta block at the top, and then I'm putting in the block body. And this block body, I have the so you can copy and paste. I think I copied and pasted the top part from my profile page. All right, so I think I worked off this template over here, candidates detail, candidates profile. All right, so there was candidate's profile. So this HTML template is the one I worked off. All right, but it's gonna confuse you because there's a lot happening over here. So rather, let me see over there. Yeah, so that's the one. All right, so I worked off of the off of this template. You'll see the layout 2, the block meta at the top, and then the block body. I have a section that is for that just shows the username and the last name. And this section is very similar to what I have on the profile page. So if you go to my profile page, I don't know if my profile page is here. Candidate profile, but you can definitely find it over if you go to users template, and instead of resume detail you go to profile and you open profile. So if you open the profile, this whole section over here, this section that shows the username, the last name, and it has a profile picture, all of that, I just basically copied that and I have that in here. And instead of having 2 columns, because remember with the profile, then I created a second column where I showed the buttons to help you navigate. Okay, I don't have those buttons. I only have 1 column with the username and the whatever, and then obviously we haven't done the links. But for now, we'll be able to see your username and then in the profile picture. Okay. Now, when you create a profile, a detailed profile, remember when we did the jobs, the jobs view, when you were displaying the list of the jobs that we're getting the jobs from the database, we would send. Let me just close this. All right, and let me open a nano users views.py. No, nano, not users, jobs. Nano jobs. Okay, if you recall this, right, when we save data in the database, this is a list view, right? But it's similar. What we did was that we created a function-based view, all right, and then we had to get the job list from the database. Okay, so to get the jobs list from the database, we just imported the model. Okay, so we set the model.objects.all. Okay, so it looks at the objects inside that model and all of them, and it brings forth a list of everything that you have saved under jobs, right? And then when you render your template, you can render this context, and the context is jobs, and then you sort of, you called it jobs, and then you had the jobs list. And then inside of your HTML template, you would just say for job in jobs, because jobs is a list, right? And then you can say job.job or whatever, and then you can display the job, but you'd have to talk to jobs because jobs is a variable that you've called it when you were sending the context back from the view function to the HTML template. So this is the data that you're sending to the HTML template. This is the HTML template itself, and this data you get it from the database like that. If you're doing a function-based view, this is how you would do it, right? Anyway, if you're doing a detailed function-based view, you would probably just have a filter and say you want a job that the username is 1 or the username is 2, whatever the filter you're filtering with, and then you would have only one, not a job list. You would have just one job, and then you would just send that one job. You must say job. Okay, so either way, you would need to call this variable something, and then inside of your HTML template, you would be talking to that variable. But when you're doing class-based views, the class-based view itself is already getting the data from the database, all right? And you don't even have the option of deciding what to call that data or what to call that context, okay? But you can use the default name that it gives it on the class-based view. And the default name that it gives it is what we call an object. So when you do like a detailed view, when it sends, similar to sending the context, when it sends the data to the HTML, it's gonna send it under the object and under an object called object. All right. So this object is basically, it's not gonna be a list. In fact, is going to be like an object. It's going to be like this, an object called object. All right, so similar to what we wrote in here, jobs is jobs list. If this is what is going to be sent to the detailed view, is going to be like an object called object. Okay, so you can use this object to talk to all the different variables inside of your object. So that's what we're doing here. All right, so at the top here under the description, we have object.user.firstname, object.user.lastname. So the object that we're being sent is the object of the resume. And if you look at the resume, you can go back to the class and you can see the object resume has all these functions. It has so it will be resume.user, resume.uniqueid, resume.image, resume whatever. But instead of saying resume.resume dot, it's going to be object dot ethnicity, object.address line 1, address line 2, and so forth. But the user is an actual class itself. So if you wanted to access any variables inside of user, like the username, you could just say object.user.username, because this user is being sent as an user class. You can see it's the actual user class. It's not just like a string. It's not a string. The data type is an object or a class data type, whatever. So you can access all the different variables inside of user. All right. So you could say, where was I? You could say user.firstname, user.lastname, user.username, user.email, user.password, whatever it is, all the variables that were inside of user. So you will access it by saying user, by object.user. All right, and that's basically how we built this HTML file. All right, and the styling is up to you what styling you want to use, but if you want to follow along with me, I worked off the candidate's profile page. All right, and like I said, this is the first part, the profile page, and then at the bottom there I deleted a lot and I just figured out how I want to display. I think I used the education block, because I just want to display it quickly, and I'll fix the HTML later. All right, so the key is, don't worry about what the HTML looks like, just think around how you want to display the different variables. Okay, so I want to have it object.sex, object.phone number, .last updated, object.cover letter, object.address line 1, address line 2, and so forth and so forth. All right, so once you've built this profile detail form, you can then paste it on your VPS and you can continue. All right, so if we go to resume detail, users.views. all right, so let's just reopen that file again. At the bottom here, to create a new view for that, you just have to specify the model and specify the HTML. Okay, so now we've already gone through the HTML. We need to now talk to our URL parts. Okay, now there's something you might not have remembered, or you remembered, but I didn't discuss it in detail when I did it, and this is where it's going to become useful. All right, so if you go back to our class, the first time we created a class, if you followed along with exactly everything I did, you will see we discussed getting the absolute path and we discussed the slug. All right, I told you we're going to need it. We haven't needed it yet, but we're going to need it now. All right, every time you display a detailed view of a class or an object, okay, you have to tell it which instance it must display. So if we have a list of resumes, we're going to have a resume for Bertha, a resume for Scholar, a resume for whoever, a resume for Maximum, a resume for maybe 100 people if we have 100 people in our database. And all these different instances are going to have unique IDs. All right, so Django would, every time it provides a unique ID of like a number, so the first one will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But I don't like to use that. Remember, I think we discussed it a little bit and said, I prefer to use, the slug, because first of all, the numbers doesn't tell you anything, but the slug is also useful for SEO, because the slug, you can then specify how the slug must look like. And I think I went through this in detail when I was talking through how we're going to create the slug over there, where we're going to use the first name of the person, the last name, and the unique ID to create the slug. Okay, and that's when we had the unique ID function, and we added that in there, and we're going to have that slug variable, which is a SlugField. Okay, so we discussed all of that, but the thing that we didn't talk about in detail is the get absolute URL function. Okay, this I know we added, but I didn't explain to you what it really does. So what this get absolute URL function does is that you create a reverse for the URL for the detailed view of this class. Okay, and the URL for the detailed view of this class, the way we're going to have it, we're going to call it resume detail, and this resume detail must match whatever name you give it inside the URL path. Okay, so we're gonna call it resume details, and then the arguments of that go into there to specify, and that argument must be a unique variable, and this argument must be a variable that exists in here. Okay, so the argument that we give it is going to be the slug, and we created a slug specifically for that. Okay, so to get the absolute URL path, we're going to use the resume detail. That's the name of the URL name that will be inside the URL path. It will be called resume detail, and the arguments that we're going to give that path is going to be the slug. So if I know the slug, like if it's my profile, my slug maybe might be Bertha dash Hokong dash whatever my unique ID. That will be the slug. So that will be the thing that gets appended at the end of the URL. Okay, and if you click that URL path, it will then take you to the detailed page for that instance that belongs to that person who has that first name, that last name, and that unique ID. And that's how we're going to navigate to the detailed pages. I know it's a mouthful, but in real applications, you will see this a lot. And I think I use even LinkedIn to demonstrate to you how it's much, much better to use a slug, all right? So once you have this get absolute URL path, okay, when you go to your URLs files, okay, so that's what we can do now. Okay, so we can go to Nano, Scholar app, urls.py. When you go to your URL path, okay, the URL, this is the URL path that we're going to be talking to, this one over here. Remember, we called it resume detail, okay? So we have to call it resume detail is the name, same name that we gave it over there, all right? So the name is resume detail, and this is the view, but the URL path itself, it will be users view. So users view and then slug, and then this, in Python format, this sort of like, like, I don't know what you call them, the V elbows, it's sort of telling you a variable that goes in here. So this is a variable. It can change depending on what, sort of like arguments you give it, okay? So this variable can be 1, it can be 2. It's a slug. It can be any slug, okay? And if the slug matches a specific slug within a database slug variable, then it's going to show that detailed view. All right, and the view function is the one that we just created now, that is a class-based view. All right, so it's users view, so it's inside the users view file. All right, and then we called it resume view detail view. If you recall, it was resume detail view that took in detail view as a not a function, as an argument, but it was extending detail view, but we called it resume detail view. Then we specified the model, and then we specified the template, remember? So that is that over there. And then because this is actually a class, we need to specify as view at the end. So you just have to add that. This is just how Django works. You have to say as view so that it's displayed as a view, and then you give it a name. So this is the difference between specifying a class-based view inside of a URL path and specifying a function-based view inside of a URL path. Both of these views could exist in the same file, but when you specify it as a function-based view, you just sort of put in the name of the function and that's it. But if it was a class-based view, you would put in the name of the class-based view, and then you have to add as view at the end of it. All right, and because this one is a view that takes in an argument, so this view takes in an argument of the slug, because we have to know which detail view it must show us. All right, we have to specify what the slug is. And that's basically all you have to do to be able to see the detail view, all right? So let me close this, all right? And then I'm going to go back to the, to opening the profile page, because this is where we link it. And I want to show you how to now link a view that has a variable on it, all right? So let's open Nano, it's the users app. And instead of the users app, it is inside of the templates folder. And then it is the profile.html file. Okay, so when you get here, I think I showed you a little bit and said if the user has a resume, then I want you to, if the user has a resume, then I want you to show me the view resume. So this is the one that then goes to the detailed page of that resume, okay? So the resume detail is what we call the URL path. So if you remember before, every time we sort of direct to a URL, we would have a URL, we'll have the URL, variable, then we would have the name of that URL path in strings, and then there would be nothing in there. But once you have a a variable that you must specify, like a slug in this specific case, we can access the slug from the user.resume.slug. So the user function, the user variable that is already available in here, the user variable dot the resume, because every user has not every user has a resume, but this user would have a resume because we said if the user has a resume, okay? So the user.resume, then it gives us the resume class, and inside of the resume class, we want the slug variable. So this is user.resume.slug is going to be the argument that's passed on to this URL. And it knows that this is going to go inside of the slug. You don't have to tell it slug is equals to. You can just put in there because you only have one variable that goes into the URL path. I know there are some URL paths that can take multiple variables, but in this case, we have only one variable, so you don't even have to say slug is equals to. You just put in what that variable is, and you can access it from the profile page. And you wouldn't know what the slug is specifically, but when you're inside the profile page, okay, you have access to the user. All right, and because you have access to the user, you can then access the resume of the user. All right, and then from the resume of the user, inside the resume, you can access the slug, and then you can be able to specify in here, this is the view resume. All right, so that's how you're gonna do this. So now we should be able to see two types of views. Okay, we should be able to see the view that shows us the creating the page, and we should be able to see the view that shows us how to view the page that we've just created. All right. Or from the profile views. Okay, so now that we've done all of this, I know it's a mouthful, it's a lot. I'm going to quickly run this Django app. So I'm going to close this, I'm going to clear this, and I'm going to copy all of that, and I'm going to paste it in there, and we're going to test what we've done. All right, so I'm going to start first of all by logging out. Okay, I want to create a whole new profile. All right, so I've been logged out, and I'm going to go to the home page. Okay, so I'm going to assume, and I like to do this with my applications all the time when I'm testing them. I'm going to assume I'm a brand new user. I'm going to come here, or I've checked some nice jobs over there, that I know this apply button doesn't go anywhere, but maybe next week lecture we're going to talk to now how to do this apply button for you to go somewhere. You go to apply page where you can see the detail of that. But for now, this apply button doesn't go anywhere. Okay, but we're going to come in here and we're going to go to register. So if I'm a new user, that's what I would do. Okay, I'm going to register. Okay, then I'm going to call them Mary Magdalene, whatever, and my email address is let me use an email address I haven't used before, mary@gmail.com. so currently it's a fake email, doesn't matter. And then my username is gonna Mary XYZ, and my password and then I'm gonna say, yep, I accept the terms and conditions, and I'm gonna register a new account. All right. So what we actually want to do is when somebody finishes registering, we want to take them to the login page. All right, because you saw that it took me back to the profile page, and I haven't actually logged in. I've created a profile, but I haven't logged in. So I'm going to change that quickly, and actually just stop this, clear, and I want to open Nano. Where is this? Users. Views.py. Okay, so after the registration over there, if the registration is successful, actually it makes sense, all right, to say take us to the home page, to the login page. All right, and then what we want to tell the user is your account was created successfully. All right, for user, all right, And then this is a concatenated string, so let's say plus again, and then please log in now. Okay, smiley face. All right. Account created user. For user, please log in now. Okay, you won't see this because I know I haven't done the messages on the login page, so you won't actually see this. But I'm going to then close this. Control X. Yes. Use the py, save that. No. All right. So what I want to do is I want to go to my login page. All right. So I want to say nano users templates. No, not users templates. I want to go nano Scholar app templates. Scholar app templates. Well, what was that template? Layout 2.html. I just want to copy that messages thing that I typed in here and paste it on the other. So all of this, just want to copy this. All right. Where is it? Yeah. Command C. Okay, and then close that. Do not save anything. And then I want to open layout 1, all right, because layout 1 is the layout that has the login and the register pages, all right. So I want to copy layout 1 and on layout 1. All right. So instead of layout 1, just before the block body over there, right, like that. I just want to paste the messages so that I can be able to see the messages inside the login page as well. All right. So I'm going to close this and save buffer, yes. All right. And then I want to run the app again. All right. So this is a good thing to regularly test your path, even though things work, but just to make sure that how would the user access it. All right. So make sure this works. Okay. So let's go register and register as somebody else. Okay, account was created for that. It's only showing the messages now because the messages are now available, but actually, also account was created. So let me just go and log in once. Or no, I want to test that actually everything works the way I want it, okay? So I'm going to create a whole new account. Let me see. Peter, no, I want a female. Portia Muloi. And my email will be portia@gmail.com. My username will be Portia M. My password. Let me enter it again. Accept the terms and conditions and let me register. All right. Now you can see your messages showing at the top. Account was created successfully for user Portia M. Please log in now, right? So I'm going to enter my username now. It's a good thing that it reminds me what my username is so that I can just use it to log in. So my username is that's the one you have to enter. It's Portia M and the password is, right? So that's a login. Let's see. And when you log in, it takes you to the profile page. So this works beautifully, right? Now we are on the profile page. What I want to do is to create a resume for Portia, okay? So let's go to create a resume. We are testing this form now. I want to pick a profile picture. Okay, so let me pick that. The date of birth, when was Portia born? Let's assume you were born long time ago in the 70s, 1975, November 9th. And you are a black female and you are divorced. Let's assume that you're divorced. And then where does Portia live? Let's pick a random address, 887 Church Street. And that is in, Church Street is in, let's say Douglasdale. And the suburb for that is Fourways. And the city is Johannesburg. And the province is Gauteng. Let's enter a random phone number, 081. All right. And then after that, let's cover letter. Let's not pick a cover letter. Let's actually pick a cover letter. All right, so let's see. I'm gonna just enter these terms of service in there, and then let's choose a CV as well, and I'm gonna enter the terms of service again as a CV. Right, let's submit the resume. All right. So now it takes us back, and you can see now there's a bit of a clash. You can see that message is it's still displaying at the top there, that resume has been created successfully. This is the message that you are displaying over here under the, where is it? Under the file, where you, after everything worked well, it says resume. That is the message success. That's what you are seeing at the top there, but it's now clashing. So I need to find a way to restyle that, but we can do that later. It's not a problem. We'll focus on the functionality of the Django. So that works well. We created the profile. We are now in the profile page because it routed us properly directly to the profile page. That's where we want to be. And now view resume, we are able to, this button initially was create resume. It's now view resume because initially it was asking if user.resume, and user.resume didn't exist because the first time you didn't have a resume. And now it's the resume exists. And then when you say user.resume, it now shows the second button, which is view resume. And if you hover over view resume, okay, I just want for you to look at the bottom left of the screen over here, where I'm pointing. Okay, if you hover over there, it will show you the URL that is going to go to. All right, and the URL says users.views.poshamoloi minus whatever. Okay, this is the slug that we built. Okay, we said I will use the first name, the last name, and some random number that you're going to get from uuid4, which was the first digits of the uuid. All right, so this is already, you can see that it created the uuid successfully for user Moloi, right? I mean for Posha Moloi, and I'm gonna just click on it and see what happens, and you'll see that same URL it shows at the top there. All right, users view Posha Moloi UID. So this is the UID that we just created. Users view is the URL path, and that's the slug. And this is a profile picture I just updated now, my first name and my last name. And then at the bottom here, okay, these are the documents I updated. Okay, it's under resumes, terms of service, wara. But you can't actually link to see the document, so I need to figure out how to display that. But that's not a big issue. That's something that we can fix later. All right, so I think the only thing that's remaining now, on the profile page is just a couple of things, like how do you want to display this. So personal information, perhaps you want to say, for personal information, you want to have like name, like a table or whatever. It's up to you. For now, it doesn't. You can't even figure out what does divorce mean, what is female. Okay, so how you fix your front end looking HTML template is really up to you. And maybe that's your homework. Go and figure out a better way of displaying this data. But I just wanted to show you how to actually access the data from the database, and that much So you can take that and put it inside of any HTML template the way that you want it to look. That makes sense, all right, to you. And they will probably, the way I'm going to do it is maybe I'll probably just have a table over here and have this on the side of the table and that on the other side of the table, so that I know what this is and all of that. And then I have to find a way to link this document so that if you click on it, at the very least, it downloads the document for you. Because if, for example, you had uploaded a CV, okay, I know these files are there, all right, because what you can do is that you can go Control C, and you can clear this, all right, and you can list this, and you can CD to the uploads, because this is where your uploads are going, right? So you can CD to uploads, all right, and instead of the uploads, you can list all of that, and then you'll be able to see the resumes. This was just created, it wasn't there before, all right, the last time you went there. So if you CD resumes, all right, and you list over here, you will see these are the documents we just uploaded. Okay, and I was testing this earlier on, so I do have another document uploaded as well. But this terms of service IJ whatever docx9 TJ at the end, all right, is this one over there. All right, so the document is technically there, so we just have to figure out how to actually link it over here, that somebody, when they click on it, it's showing the path of the document, but if they click on it, how does it actually download? And then what I wanted to do, and now we've spent a lot of time, and I'll do it next week perhaps, is that for the education, so for the resume, it will just be your personal information and your contact details, maybe your address and your profile picture. And then after that, people, once somebody gets to this page, they'll be able to say, add education, and they can click and it takes them to another form where they can fill in, and we'll create a form for the education. And then for add education, they can add their education. And then once you've added an education, it will display it here. And then you can add another education, and then you can have multiple educations displaying there. And the same with the experience. So you get here, and currently it will say, currently you have no experience, listed. Please add one, and you can click on it and it takes you to a form and you add it. You can click on it, it takes you to a form and you add it. So that's what I'm going to do maybe next week. But you can already see how to do it now because you've now gone through the whole process, and this was a much more complicated form than the form you would have to do for education and experience, but you would use the same process. So maybe that's a good homework for you to think about, and maybe next week when we meet again, I would have already done it, and you can check what you have done and compare it to what I've done and see if it would look similar. Okay, but I think that's a lot, that's a mouthful, and that's enough for one day of lecturing. Okay, so what we'll do next week is that we'll continue with completing this form. Actually, we might even leave it and do it at the end, and then focus on the jobs list. And maybe I'll figure out which one is more important to do first. Okay, so guys, we'll see you again next week.